Board of Trustees meeting on Monday, September 15th, 2025. This is a hybrid meeting, both virtually on Zoom with the link at the top of the agenda and in person at Village Hall. It is 6:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted, so we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on to number 4, the public appearances, public's opportunity to speak. We welcome your input and appreciate your engagement. This is your opportunity to share comments, questions, and concerns with the board. It's the only time set aside during tonight's meeting to do so, and it's not a forum for dialogue or debates. All comments will be noted, and where appropriate, either I'll follow up or a staff member will. We ask that you please state your name, your address, and then you'll be allotted up to 3 minutes to give your comments. And we please ask that you all be respectful, which I know that you will be. We will begin with individuals who have submitted a wish to speak form and are present at tonight's meeting, followed by those that have submitted wish to speak forms that are not at tonight's meeting, followed by those on Zoom who would like to speak, and then anyone else who is here and hasn't had a chance to submit a form or realizes that they would love to give a public comment. So we will begin with Representative Joan Fitzgerald, who is going to speak on the state budget. And we do use a little timer at our meetings too, just to keep everyone on track. Yep, and you can use the microphone and then just press the little button with the guy speaking.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. I am Representative Joan Fitzgerald. I'm the state assembly representative that represents this district. I live in Fort Atkinson, which is on the far east. Cottage Grove is the far west part of that, and everywhere in between. I thought I would just come out tonight and just give you guys a brief little update on what's been going on in the Capitol. As you can see, the handout that I brought, and I do have some extra copies for the rest of the city staff if they want one. We did pass a state budget back at the beginning of July, so I just put a few of the highlights there that I thought might interest local government, the ARIP and LRIP programs, and of the local projects program. All of those are a continuation. We're in the last state budget and are in this state budget and available again to help out local communities with funding. I hear a lot about roads being expensive, and I get that, so I thought I would highlight those couple things on there. If you have any questions about those grants, if there's anything my office can do to help you apply for those or get you information on how to apply or who to contact, please let my office know. That's what we're here for, so we can help you with those. Next little part there is just some big picture stuff going on in Wisconsin, things I thought maybe people just might be curious to know what's going on. We had a big increase in spendable revenue for our K-12 schools. There's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad in there. With the Monona Grove district, there's a decrease in general aid, but an increase in special ed aid, so school funding is very difficult. There's a lot of money being spent on the UW, which is great. Investment in Wisconsin's childcare industry, I know, is incredibly important to the people of this district. There is some money to continue the program from last budget into the first year of this biennium. So there's $360 million there. And as for individuals, there is some tax cuts in there as well. If you're a retiree or part of the middle class there is an average savings. You can see there it says $180 annually in tax cuts. The bottom is just some next steps for where we're going, some of the things that have been introduced, some of the things that are important to me. The Knowles Nelson program, we introduced a bunch of labor bills, education funding, and you can see some of the things that are coming up ahead. If you have questions about any specifics, please contact my office. My information's at the bottom. On the back of your sheet is just a little comparison of Governor Evers' budget and what actually happened. So if there's something there that you're interested in, you can take a look at that. And again, my contact info is at the bottom. Please keep in touch if there's ever anything I can help you with. I will try to circle back to all the meetings again. Maybe in January or February, we'll have another meeting and take questions then. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to JP.
Good evening. JP Vicencio, 702 Wheelbridge Road in the Village. I'm here to speak in support of the annexation and of the Creed development. So one is, again, this is a great opportunity for our village. Just on the tax element alone, that's 130, 150 roughly to the village, and 200,000 to our school district. Again, our school district is one area that we know has had a budget challenge. This could go a long way to help assist that. I know a lot of questions been going on about location. Well, just want to remind you all that the only way that the village has the opportunity to dictate location on private development is via our ordinances and our comprehensive plan. In our comprehensive plan, we state that planned office and industrial is the preferred land use if existing agriculture and small residential property located on the north side of Commerce Park is developed or redeveloped during the planning period. Furthermore, per our ordinance 325 4A2B for planned industrial, we allow the following land uses through a conditional use permit: clear cutting, indoor institutional, outdoor institutional, indoor sales or service, outdoor commercial entertainment, group daycare, artisans studio, production shop, personal storage facility, airport helipad, distribution center, communication tower, commercial animal boarding. So all those things say that this land use is appropriate and is stated by our comprehensive plan. I know there's been questions about roads, emergency services. You can see in all the staff reports that these individuals are experts have weighed in, and there's opportunities for roads with development as part of that process, adding in conditions, and emergency services at this point has stated that they have no concerns. Furthermore, with traffic, one of the conditions that's been talked about and I would encourage you to continue with is if we go forward, there's a traffic study that you can encourage or require the developer to use but again, traffic, our experts have shown that at this point we have no concerns based on predicted elements, even though it's very much a preliminary study in there. So with all that, I encourage you all to work with the developer to see this project through to the next steps as it meets all our requirements that is outlined in our ordinances and a comp plan. And again, this is going to be a great tax benefit to not only the village, but then our school district as well. Thank you.
Lori Engage.
Good evening, Village Board members. My name is Lorene Gage, 501 Progress Drive in the Village. As a former Village Board member and current resident, I want to share why I strongly support the proposed Creed Sports Complex. I know firsthand how important it is for our village to remain fiscally responsible. This $20 million private investment would bring in significant new tax revenue each year and lowering the burden on tax residents while providing more resources for our schools and community services. Additionally, this space will provide additional space for families to play sports, and a facility like this would be a tremendous benefit, giving kids spaces, safe spaces to grow, learn teamwork, and then also be able to stay active. Isn't this what we want for our children? From an economic standpoint, this complex will attract new families and businesses who want to be a part of a community that invests in its future. It will create jobs, support our local restaurants and hotels, as well as provide amenities that benefit residents of all ages. Let's talk about the location. The location is right off of the interstate, away from homes, an ideal place. According to the traffic studies, it's been shown that this project would generate less peak hour traffic than other possible uses in the Commerce Park, making it a smart fit. This is exactly the kind of responsible growth we should welcome. Privately funded, fiscally sound, and community focused. I urge all of you to support this annexation and move forward with this project. Thank you.
Casey Erlinson.
Hey, Casey Erlinson, 721 Cresthaven Drive. Good evening, trustees. I wanted to thank every one of you who were willing to listen and to revisit the sports complex proposal, and I especially want to thank the community. The outpouring of support here has been incredible. There's dozens of residents have written letters, business owners, families have shown up to speak. Trustee Severson's listening session showed residents overwhelmingly in favor, and this kind of engagement shows just how much this project means to the people who actually live and work here. And now, with the updated annexation agreement, the necessary road upgrade costs are the developer's responsibility. That was one of the biggest concerns raised before, and it's now off the table. It's handled responsibly with no extra burden on the taxpayers. What we're left with is an opportunity that is overwhelmingly positive. The projected tax revenue from this facility is not just a number on paper, it's a lifeline for other projects our village desperately needs. Parks upgrades, imminent water and sewer infrastructure, even more road and traffic improvements, or just paying down budget debt. These are things we've been struggling to fund, and this project helps make them possible without raising our taxes. And beyond the dollars, this complex gives our kids and families something they've been asking for years, a safe, modern place to play and gather. No more basketball in the Parks Department garage. This is a chance to give them the facilities they deserve, while also attracting tournaments and visitors who will eat in our restaurants, shop in our stores. A business we welcome to the community like this will work with us to find a way to make their space available at low cost that everyone can use. My wife Jenny and I have worked within softball leagues, for example, and there are always low traffic days that a complex like this would love to book and fill up their calendar. And with the other features in their plan, like the splash pad and the arcade, this could become a real haven for our kids, somewhere they want to go so they aren't bored and zooming around on their electric scooters. This is the kind of smart, forward-looking investment that builds a stronger community. It's not about outsiders, it's about us, our families, our businesses, and our future. So let's move forward with confidence. This project has the support, it has the safeguards, and it has the momentum to make a real difference for Cottage Grove. Thank you.
All right, I have 12 wish to speak forms, individuals who did not, who wish to submit a form but did not want to speak tonight. So I'll just summarize them. So Katie Morrow, 319 Southern Grange, is a village resident, is in favor of items 6A, B, and C, and notes that this is a private development that would bring more business to the Cottage Grove businesses and lower taxes. Brandon Goldbart, 203 Dublin Circle, is a village resident, strongly supports the sports complex, no-brainer. Ryan Kovach, 708 Smithland Lane, is a village resident. Sports complex would be great for the area and bring taxes down. Rob Fox, 230 Chateau Drive, is a village resident. Would be a win for the entire community, providing space for youth programs, bring visitors to town, support the local business community. Marissa Anders, 312 Fox Circle, is a village resident. Also sent an email in. She's the president and interim club executive from Monona Grove Football Club. Emphasizes the shortage of athletic space, and it would meet needs across multiple sports and bring a lot of other benefits. Mark Ladono, which I apologize if I am butchering everyone's last name tonight. 512 East Ontario Drive, is a village resident on the sports complex, supports the annexation along the interstate and bringing the sports complex to the village. Emily Crunchin, 203 Donkel Court, is a village resident, supports the Creed Sports Development Facility, and hopes the board reconsiders the project to move it forward. Stephen Way, 100 Quail Parkway, is a village resident, supports the pre-annexation agreement, annexation petition, and the sports development facility. Thanks the board for revisiting this, and notes that this is something that is currently lacking, and he has experience with the lack of fields as a coach as well. Michelle Steffens, 308 Dublin Circle, is a village resident, is in favor of the sports complex, the annexation, and hopes that we revisit the opportunity. David Carrillo, owner of Grace Coffee in Cottage Grove, is not a village resident, is in favor of the sports development facility, and that it creates jobs, attracts business growth, and decreases the property taxes, and he welcomes positive growth into the village. Britt Leach, 723 Willow Run Street, is a village resident, is in favor of entertaining the Creed Development Project. It's not in a TID and bring tax revenue for us, and also supports our local businesses and benefits our community for good change. Amy Fosdick, 2797 Ruffian Circle, is not a village resident, is in favor of the Creed development, wants to reiterate her support, and it knows that it will have a positive impact on the local business, tourism, and area families. I will note that we've had 11 different emails as well, and I will not read or summarize those tonight, but they are all on the public record, and the board has received all of those emails as well. So at this time, I'll open it up to anyone who is on the Zoom call that would wish to give public comments, and if you want, you can use the hand raise feature. Is there anyone else, either on Zoom or in person, that would like to give public comment tonight? All right. With that, we'll move on to number 5, discuss and consider the minutes of the village board meeting on September 2nd, 2025. Those meeting minutes are linked in the agenda as a PDF.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Murphy and a second by Severson. Any comments or discussion on the meeting minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. At this time, I'm going to ask that the board please consider moving new business up to the front, because we do have 3 consultants that are in attendance tonight to give their updates to the board. And then we will also, because Associated Appraisal is here, we'll do the revaluation presentation as well. And then I'm assuming we can just kind of knock out those 3 resolutions too, if that's okay with everyone else. All right. So at this time, we'll move to number 7, new business. We have the annual review of village consultants and service providers. I think these might be the final 3 for the year. So we have Briar Patch Youth Services, Strand, and Associated Appraisal. Their PDFs are linked in the agenda in order, and so we'll take them in that order as well. So we'll start with Briar Patch. Jay. And you are welcome to stand or sit. Just make sure the microphone's on.
I am getting older, so sitting is an option for me, but I can hang in it. But I do have my glasses. Thanks for the opportunity. Apologize for my voice. Not sick, just have bad allergies, and so I'll hang in there as long as I can with it. Thanks for the opportunity, and I think, Cameron, you're going to move me along with the backdrop, so awesome. So Briar Patch has provided what we started out calling peer court services since the late 2000s here in the village of Cottage Grove. A little bit of note of history. For $10,000 I don't have. Can tell me who the village president was at that time?
Ken Dahl.
Good job, Paula. 100% correct. Ken Dahl, that's how far back in history we go. And so it was started as an opportunity in this room for young people to sit as a panel, young people who had municipal court violations that came through the municipal court judge, heard those cases, the tickets that they received, and as an option to paying the ticket, the jury of their peers would come up with a solution that would work to kind of figure out what are the next steps for this young person to kind of make things right without having to pay the ticket. There wasn't a financial consideration. Since that time, the village has contributed $6,000, which they have continued to do for the 15 plus years that we've been doing it. Very grateful for that money, because it does go to all of our admin costs. It goes to the staff salaries that cover all of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute here. And so whilst not all of the, obviously, budget, but it does contribute to it, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you for your support for that. This year marks a difference in how we've done our work. We met with the chief, we met with Cindy last year, and made the decision that it would, as we grew and as things kind of changed, it would make sense, rather than have things go all the way to the municipal court judge and Judge Hempfinger giving kids the option, the police department stepped up and said, hey, we'd like the opportunity to be able to, rather than issue tickets, we're going to give a restorative justice opportunity for these young folks that get citations within the village. They're municipal citations, so things such as underage drinking, marijuana possession, retail theft, some batteries, things like that. That's the type of stuff that we're talking about. So when police have contact with our young people, rather than give them that ticket, they have the option of going through restorative justice program. That's what we are. The restorative justice program then receives those referral information. We go ahead and contact the young people, their families, and set up what we call a restorative circle. The restorative circles take place sometimes here in Cottage Grove, sometimes at our offices. It's whatever convenient for the young person and their family to be able to attend. That's kind of how we go about that. Perfect. The restorative justice program aims to make youth feel supported through a restorative justice process while being held accountable for any harm caused. The restorative justice services shift the focus from what rules or laws were broken and punishment to specify what harm was caused and how to repair that. The way I describe this to folks is like when I was a kid, I made less than stellar choices oftentimes, and many of those would have probably risen to the level of a municipal court citation. Thankfully, I lived in a neighborhood and I had a parent that held me accountable by going and visiting Mrs. Smith, I would not use her real name, when we egged her house. I assume that's not a good thing to do. And so when I was caught, which I was, my dad marched me over there and made me apologize and ask what I could do to make things right with Mrs. Smith. Our peer court circles operate very similarly, except with other young people who have been through the process. They sit in on the circle. The parents are involved. Community members go through a volunteer process if they'd like to participate in that. And basically what we do is we read through what happened that led them to police contact. We kind of ask questions, figure out what's going on for this young person, kind of get to the root of what's going on with them. And then from that, we come up with a solution that makes sense for everybody involved. Everybody has a say, everybody has a voice, and everybody agrees to it after it's all done. That's kind of how we've evolved it over the years. It's a voluntary program. It serves as an alternative to the, of course, traditional youth justice system, and it exists in Cottage Grove to address minor misdemeanor offenses, truancy or municipal violations through restorative practices. It does serve kids ages 12 to 17, and we certainly use community support to be able to do that. So I'll switch pages now. Key messaging is that it is voluntary. Kids have a choice. They can say, nope, I just want to pay the fine and be done. That's still a choice. If the young person goes through the process, we monitor them, we work with them for a period of 3 months or more. If there's an extension that's needed because maybe they weren't able to meet, and so it got kind of pushed out, we're not going to not allow a kid a chance to be able to complete that just because they didn't have enough time to be able to do that. So we'll work with them till that obligation is complete. But if they don't complete it, it does still move forward to the municipal court, and they still end up having to pay a fine if that happens. And we'll get to a slide in a minute that shows the success of that. So we can go ahead and switch to that one. Goals and impacts. The goal of the Restorative Justice Program is to explore accountability and impact with youth and to support them in moving forward. We understand that youth make poor choices and make mistakes. The RJ process is designed to learn from those mistakes or those actions and to provide an alternative to help our youth repair any harms caused and to make better choices in the future by using a restorative justice framework. If there is a victim involved in that, we certainly reach out to them and ask if they would like to be a part of the process. If they're not, if they'd like to make a statement or have any input on that, we certainly take that into consideration as well. Measuring of the program's success is done through the youth's ability to follow through with the outcome of their circle process, make better decisions by utilizing the tools provided to help them be more productive in the community, and their ability to accept accountability. This is shown through decreased recidivism rate among our youth. The next slide, I think, is the total of kids that we've had come through since August of this year. So I think there's 22 youth that have participated in the Restorative Justice Circle. Of those, 16 have successfully completed it, 3 were unsuccessful, and 3 are still in progress. All right, next page. Overall, it's certainly a male-dominated situation where we have 12 young men who have participated successful, 2 unsuccessful, 5 female participants, and 1 unsuccessful female participant. Overall, if you think of, how many of you are familiar with restorative justice? Does it all make sense? So when you think about restorative justice, you think of it as a triangle, right? The triangle is made up of 3 different parts. The community safety, the community has a right to feel safe. Personal accountability, young person needs to be held accountable. And then the competency development is the base, that the young person should leave the system or the situation that they were in better than when they started with it. That's the basis of that. We use the circle process because it's equal. Everybody is part of it. We have equal responsibility in helping that young person understand the impact of what they did on their community. So that's always at the core of what happened. Whether it's here, we operate RJ services in the city of Madison. We operate RJ services in the city of Sun Prairie. They're all done the same. So the thing that we've learned about this over the many years of doing it, we've been doing this since the late 90s, and yes, I have been around for all of those years, is that restorative justice programs consistently show high satisfaction rates among the participants, especially victims. In some studies, they report that up to 90% of victims who take part in restorative justice sessions feel satisfied with the process. This has evolved for us, not here, but with kids who are youth justice involved. Our Dane County District Attorney's Office, the Juvenile District Attorney's Office has started to use this as a process that rather than moving forward with charging kids as a delinquent, they give them the option of going through restorative justice circles. We involve victims in that process, and that's for more involved crimes such as burglary, offenses that could include, retail theft, which I kind of talked about already. But it's been a really highly successful opportunity because what we've learned is that if kids participate in this process, the circle restorative justice process, and this is data that I get from the Dane County Juvenile Court program, and what they found is that kids who have participated in it, we run the names of those kids, that only about 5 or 6% of those kids find their way into the formal youth justice system process, where they'll be assigned a social worker, they'll be involved. For kids who don't go through that process, we know that about 25% of those kids will find their way into the formal juvenile court process if they don't go through a peer court. So there's, that's been several decades now that we followed that, and that's kind of made, its way through. I don't want to run through all of these, but I do have a couple of testimonies that I'll certainly, have you guys, be able to read through on your own. One's from a female 16 who participated. One is a male 13, and another one who's a female 16. And I'm just going to read that one. You can read the other ones because, they're all really positive. But the last one I'm going to read is this one. A female 16-year-old says, I didn't fully understand the opportunity that I was being referred for when I received the referral for the restorative justice program. I was just ready to pay my ticket and put this behind me. Something changed when I was contacted by the advocate. Those are our counselors and advocates who work directly with the families, who patiently and passionately explained the purpose of the restorative justice program. I remember receiving information that day that explained the history behind the circle process, but what stood out most to me was the choice that I had a voice and a choice in the matter. Although my actions caused me to be there, my voice still mattered. Through community advocacy, I was able to be vulnerable, take accountability of my actions, humble enough to seek a solution, and brave enough to accept help from a community I built. I wish I would have been that articulate when I was 16 years of age to be able to write something like that, but those are the kinds of responses that we get and feel just really positive about the work that's being done out here and overall with restorative justice. And then why restorative justice works is that it's victim empowerment. Victims have the opportunity, and I know we haven't had a ton of victim involvement out here in the village, but I'd like to see more of that as we move forward and get more kind of acclimated to how this new process is working. But having victims have the opportunity to express how the offense affected them and what they need to happen in order to heal and move forward. Offender accountability through the RJ Circle process, youth participants actively participate in creating and establishing an outcome that holds them accountable through a meaningful agreement. Youth receive support from our RJ team during the completion of their agreement. And then community healing safety, the RJ process can and does involve members of the community, peer engagement to support a sense of shared responsibility and support, and then the lower recidivism that we talked about. And for me, it's the competency development piece and the fact that often we have kids that have a lot of stuff going on in our lives, and we do serve about 2,000 kids a year through Briar Patch services, ranging in age from 10 to 24, as well as supporting parents. But what we found is, young people who maybe are, having some challenges, that we can connect them to some of our other programs as well. So we operate a youth shelter for youth experiencing homelessness. We have a youth employment program. We have the parent support program that kind of works with the parents to kind of understand what's going on with their young person and give them support and referral sources out to be able to kind of connect with other folks. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So is there any questions that you all have?
investment in our community, so thank you. And I think we made a lot of good changes last year. And I don't know if Chief, if you have anything you want to add about, because we did find out, I don't want to put you on the spot. We don't have the peer court steering committee anymore, and instead everything is moving through law enforcement.
No, he summed it up very well and has been a very positive program for the community and the youth of the community.
Questions or comments from board members?
So do you meet in Cottage Grove? Okay.
They can. A lot of the folks want to just come into Madison. Our offices are off of Rimrock Road, but we can, and we have met out here. So it's up to the families.
So how often do families typically meet?
So the circle process itself, it can be anywhere from a half hour to we've had them up to 3 or 4 hours in length. It just kind of depends on kind of what things are happening. Sometimes we've kind of had the parent and the young person meet separately to kind of, because it's been a situation where that hasn't been going so well. And then bringing them back together and to kind of, or maybe set up a time at a different time once we get the backstories a little bit more in place. So it really just depends on the situation and the dynamic of what's happening within that family.
Yeah, thank you. I was aware of many of your other areas in your organization, so I was not aware that you did restorative justice. So thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
I just said, thanks, Jay, for all of your work making a difference in these young people's lives. The data shows, that you can help set them on the right track through this process, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and I'm just the spokesperson tonight. Dominique Smith is our program manager, and she does, and her staff does all the hard work. That's not me. So I want to give kudos to them, but I will relay that to them.
Extend that to them, yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We've got Strand up next.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight for the annual review of Village Engineering Services. My name is Josh Straka, Ty Wallen. I'm sure most of you know us, right? We're at these meetings, a variety of different committee meetings. We're excited again to be here tonight. We've been the village engineer since 21, so 4 years. We're going to just share a little tonight about ourselves again, what we've been working on this year, and things to come. Let me just make sure that's advancing. Yep, okay. Profile of firm, there we go. Profile of firm shows organizational strength, assuring village of long-term partnership. So we've been established since 1946. We're a multidisciplinary engineering firm, 12 locations nationwide, more than 500 employees. We're employee-owned. Most of our locations are in the Midwest. Madison is actually the headquarters. That's where we got started back in 1946. There's about 200 people in the Madison office, and a lot of them serve this community and in a variety of different ways, and we'll touch on that tonight. So we have a pretty deep bench here in the Madison area. We're a full-service engineering firm that offers efficient collaboration. Municipal is kind of where we're practice, where Ty and I practice, what serves this community. We do transportation, wastewater, water service, water supply, buildings, facilities, green infrastructure, and also storm sewer, stormwater, and aviation. Just our team. Our team provides the village with numerous engineering connections. So every year I kind of show this chart a little bit and the people that are working day in and day out with the village, and just to show you kind of the amount of staff. And this isn't everybody. This is just some of the people that have done quite a bit with staff here this year. Myself as village engineer, Ty, Christine, you've seen probably at different meetings, whether it's utility or public works. Andy Constance, our pump station guy. Dan Carpio, GIS. Mark Schubach does all the stormwater reviews for developments that come in. That's kind of his specialty. Nate Aronowski, water distribution, well number 2 would be a good one for him that he's working on right now. Dan Johnstone's doing the stormwater management plan for the entire village right now. Matthew Franklin, I wanted to highlight him. He's been in the village the last 2 years. So you probably see him with a hard hat or a vest on. And he's bouncing around with all the different projects. So he probably spends the most time physically in the village, would be Mr. Franklin. Joe Strank, electrical engineer, doing all the SCADA upgrades. Sean Bridwell, he did most of the solar work. Once in a while, there's still a question or two, so he's always there in case Kyla needs him. And then Evan Constant does pretty much all the structural stuff. We have two Constants. Yes, they're twins, and yes, they're identical, if you can tell by the photos there. They're in different groups, though. Recent projects demonstrate our ability to serve the village's needs. And this is just a big list of projects that we worked on over the past year since probably the last time we were reviewed. A lot of site developments, private site developments there. Developments in the larger scale like West Lawn, Quarry Ridge, last couple phases of those. Amazon Utilities. We get help Sean with his park stuff. Houston Park, Bark Park. We're working on some other stuff right now. And then Public Works and Utilities, the bigger projects, 2025 streets, hydrate, water main relocation, stormwater quality plan, skate upgrades, ridge lift station, things like that. We also provide daily assistance, kind of an extension of village staff, and that's how we kind of feel here. We really enjoy working with the staff. You have really good staff, they communicate well. We're on a kind of an as-need basis with them, on call whenever they have a question. Bi-weekly meetings we have with them, bi-weekly meetings in the month with them. We attend the early developer meetings, monthly reports, all the different village meetings. We assist with budgeting, helping kind of planning, helping you guys kind of come up with your priorities and kind of put, some numbers to that and plan that with them. And then provide some GIS assistance as needed. So with that, I want to turn it over. Ty, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the projects that we're doing in the village?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And just to echo what Josh said, working in the village is such a highlight of working at Strand, and I love working with village staff almost every day. So really got some great staff here that we get to work with. So first project I'll talk about is the 2025 streets and pedestrian improvements. This has kind of been a trend the last few years of these street maintenance projects. This year, I'll highlight a couple of streets here on the left. You can see Bonnie Road, just up the road from MSB, as well as Heather Drive, and a couple of cul-de-sacs off of that. So you can kind of see where we are in the village. I'm sure you've seen the project. So I'll show a couple of before and afters. So with these street projects, we do what's called a pulverize. So the contractor will come in and they'll grind up all the pavement, and then we'll get to, like Matthew or our field staff will get to, with the contractor, identify like soft spots, and then we get a chance to fix those before the streets are paved. Another part of this project was ADA improvements. So as you'll see in this after photo, improvement of curb ramps, sidewalk, spot curb replacement as well, just to kind of improve that ADA accessibility. Let's see. Similarly here, this is over on Heather Court, so over on the east part of town. You can see a before photo here, and again, after you can see the new curb ramps there, nice new pavement, and thought it turned out really well. As well, part of this project, we don't have photos of it yet, but at Main Street and Taylor Street, the RRFB crosswalk portion of the project, that's almost done. We're hoping by the end of the month they'll be done with the signal, with the flashing lights, as well as the path along County BB. So had a few delays there due to some utility companies, but we think the contractor is getting back on track. As well as Josh mentioned parks. So Houston Park, here's a couple of before photos. On the left there is the old playground, as well as the old basketball court. And working with Sean throughout the design process to kind of identify what products and what is going to be best for the village. These are some after photos. So on the left there, that's the new playground with a completely ADA accessible surface. That's a artificial turf surfacing with a sidewalk around it, connected to a new bike trail or bike path that leads to the shelter. And on the right there is a new full half court size basketball court that's just to the east of that new playground. So really great working with Sean throughout design and construction, working with the contractor on site. Seeing these projects all the way through to the end, which is really satisfying. So as I mentioned during construction, effective engineering produces efficient construction. So just to give a couple of examples on the projects that I just talked about, 2025 streets, the village had a budget of $1 million for the street rehabilitation portion of that project. Our engineer's estimate with contingency was right around 908,000. The bid came in at just about 910,000, and up to date, the construction cost is about 750,000. Pretty much that's all done. The streets portion is done. So showing some good savings there, efficient construction engineering, keeping track of quantities, things like that to help make sure that things come in at or below the bid costs. And similarly, Houston Park, engineer's estimate was right around 334,000. Bids came in at 321, and that project is done as well. The final construction cost came up to 315,000. So just really great to work with the contractors, work with village staff throughout design and construction to see things through. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Josh to talk about what we've got coming up.
Yeah, so upcoming 25, 26. So stuff we're working on right now in public works, utility, and park projects, and probably will continue into 26. Heyday, you've noticed they've started to move ground out there. We'll have Matthew Franklin will be back out. They got to do utilities, street work is fundamental way extension. They're moving right along. Far Interceptor Sewer will be discussed tonight, but we just got the bid backs for that project and moving forward on the construction side if approved. Water tower cellular equipment construction observation. This is kind of an interesting one that you may not be aware of, but like we climb towers, right? So we have engineers that will climb the tower, and some might just say, well, they're just going to put their stuff on your tower and it's going to be fine. Well, what we find a lot of times is they ruin the paint, they weld stuff to your railing on the top, and things don't get fixed. And when they don't get fixed, then they rust, and then things happen. So through the design process of it, we reviewed plans, and we'll have somebody, Christine Herbert, who was on here earlier, we'll climb that tower and watch construction and make sure it's done right and have them repaint stuff if they have to after the fact. So little things like that I think really matter to protect your assets. Shady Grove Park, well number 2, County Trunk TT and Gaston Road water main looping, Amazon's offsite improvements, the NNTT stuff, we're still working on the county and state with those, getting close though. West Lawn Estates, there's one more phase of that will likely probably not happen until 26 now, maybe late this fall. And then just other stuff that you may approve or other new development stuff that might come through. So just looking at a few of those projects real quick. Farm Interceptor, that's from Vilas to Cottage Grove Road. There's a couple developers. That project, which just went out to bid, came back with good bid costs and is on the docket here coming up for Village Board. Shady Grove Park, pretty much all done and designed. We were waiting on equipment, and Sean let me know that the residents were voting on a few different manufacturers, and I think we have a solution there, but more to come on that, and we'll be able to start construction on that late this year, really not active until next year, which I know the residents wished it would move a little further quicker, but it's getting there. Well, number 2, you've seen that either at the Utility Commission, came through public for Plan Commission, and then also, board, 90% plans. We're getting close to finalizing those as well. And then just lastly, TT and Gaston. That's the redundant main that, we're trying to link to the north side, right? We have Amazon and other development that's going to be occurring up there. This has been thought of for a while because there's actually a casing to the east that crosses 94 that we'll be installing main through and coming to this side and connecting back on Gaston Road. So with that, just any questions you may have for us or feedback for our services last year.
Very busy, long list
Yeah.
of projects.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all the work you do and all the different committees you sit in and give your expertise on. She looks like she wants to say something.
I do.
Okay.
So I do want to say something. So I recently brought to Public Works, so Strand provides an engineering report for both Public Works and Utility Commission meetings. A lot of times if you read both of them, or as Chris sits on both committees, both reports are generally about the same, give or take things. In my past, I actually did used to complete these reports for the village when I was with Strand. I'm proposing that I wrap those reports into my director's report. Not that we don't need Strand on the engineering side, but as they both have said, that I talk to one of them, or Christine or Matthew, almost daily regarding different construction projects. So if that's something that you guys are amicable, that's something that then we would just loop in together for both the directors and then engineering's report.
I'm seeing nodding heads from everyone, so I would take that as board approval.
Yeah, I think it's more efficient. I think we've been trying to do that, is look for ways to also save costs, right? Like if staff can provide it, which you have very capable staff here, Kyla, Aaron, Sean, Cameron, and others, if they can take over some of maybe what was done by the village engineer 5, 10 years ago. We're trying to find efficiencies there. I mean, erosion control permitting, you've been taking over a little bit more too, and just kind of funneling it through also. So trying to be as efficient as we can with the time that they have in order to complete tasks. We've been looking out for ways to do that.
Comments or questions from board members for Strand?
I guess I just follow that up with, I appreciate then that, as a consultant, that you're also looking out for, how we can best spend our limited dollars, of course. So being forward-looking, monitoring work on our assets to make sure we're protecting those. And we really do lean on you to have that deep bench at Strand, and so we appreciate that, and that all of you are an extension of our staff, and I appreciate your expertise. I've served on a couple of different committees with your staff and always had positive working experience, and I look forward to continuing our good working relationship. So thank you.
Thank you. We enjoy working here.
All right, you guys can take your seat, resume your position in the back there. And Associate Appraisal is our final review of the year.
Well, good evening. I'm Nick Laird with Associated Appraisal. I believe our assessing firm has been servicing your village with our services since the early 90s or the last 25 years. I personally have been with the village working here since 2014. We are here to give 2 presentations this evening. I will be presenting some of the annual duties and the reports that are completed on behalf of the village, and Dean will be following up with a presentation regarding the revaluation timeline for the upcoming year. So again, I will begin with the role of the assessor. The assessor for the village, as the assessor for the village, one of the primary responsibilities is to determine the fair market value of all taxable property. Fair market value is the price a typical buyer would be willing to pay for a property under normal market conditions where both the buyer and the seller are well informed and acting in their own best interests. Assessors must also classify property according to use. Wisconsin law recognizes 8 statutory classifications: residential, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, undeveloped, agricultural forest, productive forest, and other, or otherwise known as farm sites. Each classification follows different rules and directly impacts how a property is valued. Another key duty to administer property records and maintain the assessment role. This includes discovering, listing, and valuing property under the ownership and legal descriptions, and maintaining physical and descriptive data. Assessors also participate in the open book sessions and the board of review to support transparency, accountability in the assessment process. Finally, assessors must comply with the standards from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. All real property valuations must follow the Wisconsin Property Assessment Manual to ensure consistency with the state law for classification, valuation, and the assessment cycle. The annual assessment calendar overview. January 1st is the key date for property assessments. It serves as the official annual assessment date for property tax purposes. The condition and market value of each property on January 1st determines its assessed value for the entire year. Any construction, demolition, or improvements completed after January 1st are not included until the following year's assessment. In February, we must submit and provide the assessment data, or PAD, which includes all prior year's sales. This information is used to build the preliminary assessment sale ratio report. By March, we need to review and process all exemption requests that property owners have submitted. And by June, we must submit our Municipal Assessor's Report, or MAR, which is used by the Department of Revenue to calculate each municipality's equalized value. January 1st marks our official assessment date. All taxable real property is valued based on condition and status of that date. Property owners or business owners who want their assessments or records reviewed must submit a request for review, and this must be done before open book and board of review process begins. Our office is open all year long, accepting review forms from property owners. The Wisconsin Department of Revenue provides assessors with updated resources, training reminders in January. This includes the annual property tax guide and notices about the provide assessment data. Assessors and municipal offices distribute the state property tax exemption form, known as a PR 230. Because this form is due March 1st, we begin making it available to the public in January. Assessors using the updated Wisconsin Property Assessment Manual. The DOR updates this manual every year, and it guides us in applying state law correctly throughout the assessment cycle. As we move into February, the assessor's office shifts focus towards submitting prior year sales data and beginning the new assessment cycle. This month includes work on manufacturing property rolls and general annual maintenance duties. Our office must submit all 2024 or previous year's sales data to the DOR by February 7th. This data is used to calculate preliminary assessment to sale ratios reports for the village. Once the DOR issues these preliminary reports, we review both usable and rejected sales for errors in misposted assessments. We correct any clerical errors and confirm property classifications. We notify the Equalization Bureau if we find any concerns about correctness or errors in specific sales. By February 15th, the DOR releases preliminary manufacturing real estate rolls. This allows our office to review all properties classified and assessed as manufacturing property within the village for accuracy. This month also leads directly to the March 1st deadline for property owners to file exemption requests. March is the month for assessment maintenance work as we prepare for the upcoming assessment roll. While the exact tasks may vary year to year, this is when we focus heavily on updating property record cards, verifying recent changes to properties within the village. Our office works on the annual records update. We update the assessment roll to reflect any new construction, remodeling, land use changes that have occurred over the last year. This ensures the assessment roll accurately represents the current physical conditions of all properties in the village. We conduct field inspections on parcels with known changes. These inspections are limited to specific properties where physical changes have occurred, rather than adjusting market values across the entire village. The goal is to confirm and document changes so they are properly reflected on the roll. We coordinate with the Department of Revenue on manufacturing property assessments. Manufacturing properties are assessed directly by the Department of Revenue. This manufacturing work is part of the broader assessment cycle, leading toward the open book and board of review, which typically takes place between April and mid-May. It's important to note the difference between an annual maintenance and a revaluation or an interim market update. Annual maintenance focuses on updating the roll for physical changes to the property and does not adjust all values to current market. A revaluation or an interim market update is a comprehensive update of all assessed values to align them with current market conditions, and under state law should occur at least once every 5 years once the municipality falls out of compliance, meaning that the equalized value is, assessments are 10% below equalized value. April is a month for assessment work where we can move closer to the open book and board of review periods. Our focus shifts to finalizing the annual property assessment roll, submitting required reports to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, and completing maintenance assessments for properties that experienced changes since the January 1st assessment date. Our office reviews and updates the assessment roll based on all changes identified since January 1st. This includes new construction projects that have been completed or are substantially underway, remodels or demolitions that impact property value, major improvements such as additions or extensive renovations, zoning or tax classification changes, parcel splits, or combinations. This work prepares the roll for the upcoming open book period where property owners will have the opportunity to review and discuss their assessments before they are finalized. April is also when we ensure all updates are complete and accurate so that the roll is ready for the board of review hearings. May, our office focuses on mailing assessment notices, conducting the open book, and preparing for the board of review. While exact dates vary each year, these steps are consistent across Wisconsin and are essential to maintaining a fair and accurate assessment roll. I'll note that our open book this year was held on April 8th from 11 a.m. to 1, and board of review was completed May 5th. Assessment notices are mailed to property owners whose values have changed during the year. These notices explain new assessed value and outline how property owners can review or appeal their assessment. This mailing begins the public portion of the assessment cycle and ensures every property owner has a clear opportunity to understand their updated valuation. This is a time when property owners can informally meet with the assessor to review and discuss their assessments. The final assessment roll is submitted to the municipal clerk before open book begins. Open book is a time to resolve errors and misunderstandings before the formal appeal process begins. As open book concludes, our focus shifts to preparing for the board of review, the formal body that hears property assessment appeals. The board of review operates as a quasi-judicial hearing where assessors defend property values under oath. We present evidence, testimony, and documentation to support the assessed value. This process ensures that property owners are given the due process and that the assessment roll for the Village of Cottage Grove is accurate, defensible, and transparent. Moving into June, we focus on finalizing the assessment roll and completing important municipal and state reporting requirements. One of the major responsibilities in June is completing the MAR report, or the Municipal Assessor's Report. The deadline to electronically file the MAR is June 9th, and the filing is done through the state's MyDOR.gov portal. The MAR plays a key role in the state's calculations for equalized value, tax incremental district values, and net new construction. In addition to the MAR, the Statement of Assessments must also be submitted. This report is prepared by the municipal clerk with the assistance from the assessor and is due June 9th, or immediately after board review is concluded. The Statement of Assessments provides a summary of the village's assessed values, parcel counts, and exempt property information, and is critical part of the state's annual reporting system. Completing these tasks in June ensures that the village assessment data is accurate and certified for the use in the state's equalized value process and the upcoming year. Moving into July through December. As the year progresses into late summer and fall, the assessor's office shifts from completing the current assessment roll to coordinating year-end reporting and preparing for the next assessment cycle. This involves close coordination with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue and through a reviewed property data, values, and classification reports. On August 1st, the DOR releases certified values for the year. This includes equalized values, net new construction values, tax incremental district values, and on November 1st, the DOR posts the preliminary major class comparison report on the website. This report compares assessed values across major property classes, and the DOR issues non-compliance notices to municipalities that fall outside of the compliance ranges. Our office reviews these reports carefully and follows up with the DOR if any adjustments or clarifications are needed. Our office reviews and responds to questions from the Department of Revenue regarding classification changes, shifts between exempt and taxable properties, and transfers of value to or from manufacturing. The year-end also marks the start of the preparation for the next year's assessment cycle. This includes property records, collecting building permits, and other official documents showing changes, additions, or remodels, sales data, reviewing real estate transfer returns, and conducting field inspections on recent sales to track market trends. Maps and surveys, we gather plats, site maps, and survey documents to update parcel boundaries. We collect owner information working with the county to update legal descriptions, parcel numbers, and owner contacts. And we begin field work for the upcoming year and the assessment cycle. This year-end work ensures the assessment records remain accurate, complete, and fully aligned with the state reporting requirements and lay the groundwork for the next assessment year. In closing, the assessment process is a year-round effort that helps keep property values in the Village of Cottage Grove fair and accurate. Each step we take from January 1st assessment date through the year-end reporting ensures our assessment roll is reliable and transparent, supporting a fair property tax system for everyone in the community.
So we'll take a brief pause and ask questions specific about annual 2026 revaluation communication.
Doesn't look like there's any questions or comments from the board, so we'll let you move right into your, we'll move down to 7, new business, B, associated appraisal update for the 2026 property reevaluation process.
All right, good evening, trustees and staff. My name is Dean Peters. I'm also with Associated Appraisal, the village's assessment firm.
Your microphone's on. We have a press. There you go.
There we go. I'll repeat myself. Good evening to village trustees and staff. My name is Dean Peters. I'm with the village assessment firm, Associated Appraisal Consultants. Thanks to Nick for the very, very detailed presentation on the assessor's annual duties. I'll bet you didn't know the assessor did all that different stuff. So, but yeah, specifically, I'd like to talk about the revaluation coming up in 2026 because we're about to get started with phase 1 of that. And it is not a typical valuation cycle when we do a revaluation. They tend to come every 5 to 7 years in one form or another. Sometimes we do what's called an interim market update, which is just a revaluation using the data that we already have on file. But this year, we're going to be doing an actual on-site visit of all properties, which is a little larger scope. So to get started, just a little bit of background on Associated Appraisal, some background on revaluations. We'll talk about the timeline for the project for this coming year. And then another thing that's been important with village staff is communication strategy. How are we going to interact with the public and get the information out? And then we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end. So a little bit about Associated Appraisal. We work with over 240 municipalities. We have members that sit on committees with the State Department of Revenue and the Wisconsin Association of Assessing Officers. We are the largest assessment firm in Wisconsin. We perform approximately 45 revaluations per year, which is far more than any other company that does assessment work in Wisconsin. And we are experienced with your community. We've served the Village of Cottage Grove as the assessor for at least 25 years. I think it's been since sometime in the 90s. So revaluations are required by law for compliance with a specific state statute. The statute basically says that assessments for residential, commercial, or any major class of property have to be within 10% of market value at least once every 5 years. So if market conditions are changing quickly, like we've seen during the pandemic and things when home prices were going up, it's going to mean that you have to have a revaluation a little bit more often to keep current with the market, versus if market values were increasing very slowly or were stalled, you might be able to go longer between revaluations. They are required also through the Wisconsin Property Assessment Manual, which is published by the Department of Revenue. The main purposes are, number one, to bring assessed values to 100% market value, and number two, to update the property records through on-site inspections. The state does require that the assessor has to maintain accurate and complete property records. The last on-site revaluation done in the village was in 2008, so that's been quite a lot of years now. It is time to get those properties visited again. And then in terms of updating for market value, the village's level of assessment was only 77% in 2024. We won't have the percentage yet for 2025 until, I think, September they published that, so 2024 is the most recent. Residential was at 76%, commercial was at 79%. Presumably, we will be, lower than that for 2025, and then in 2026, we'll be at 100% with the revaluation. So let's talk about the process. This year's revaluation will be an exterior revaluation, meaning that we're generally not going to be requesting to view the interior of the homes. That was part of the discussion when the contract was initially proposed and signed. All properties will be physically inspected, at least all taxable properties. Government-owned properties or otherwise exempt properties don't necessarily get visited, but otherwise we'll visit everything. And then we will analyze
all the sales that have occurred within the village over a 2 to 3 year period for a market analysis and for building valuation modeling. And then ultimately, all properties are going to be revalued according to local real estate market values as of 1/1 of 2026. We won't be probably notifying property owners of their changed assessments till sometime in late summer of 2026, but it's important to remember the valuations are always by law as of January 1st. So the on-site inspections are kind of the first phase that we'll get into, and we'll be starting very soon. The very first thing we do is mail out an informational letter to all property owners a couple of weeks before we begin the actual field data collection. This letter does explain the purpose of the revaluation, how to identify our staff, things like why we need to be, physically on the property, gives contact information if you have questions ahead of time, and there is such a thing as the option to refuse to allow the assessor to visit your property, but you do have to, call in advance to do that. And so those types of things are all explained in the letter. When the assessor or the assessor's staff comes to the property, the first thing is to make contact at the main entrance. So we, ring the doorbell or knock at whatever looks to be the main entrance. We'll leave a door hanger if there's no answer at the door. Otherwise, if there is, we'll explain obviously who we are, what we're doing. We'll have to just walk around the house or any outbuildings, take new exterior photos. We're looking at things like verifying the condition and the quality ratings of the house or the buildings, looking for attachments like decks, porches, and patios, which all have to be listed in the assessment records. Sometimes we need to take measurements or verify measurements to update the sketches or the diagrams that we have on file for the houses. And all that's part of the state outlined procedure that assessors do with on-site visits. To identify our staff, we're going to all be driving fleet vehicles clearly marked with the Associated Appraisal logo and name on the sides. Our staff members will be carrying photo ID tags that indicate that we're employees of Associated Appraisal Consultants. And we'd also like to have in hand a simple introduction letter that they can carry on their clipboards on village letterhead that says, this is so-and-so, and this person has been contracted by the village to do this assessment work, just to make sure that property owners are comfortable that the person that they're talking to is in fact working for the village, doing village services. The valuation work process will consist of an analysis of all the real estate sales over the past 2 to 3 years. It's important to understand the assessor has to use professionally accepted appraisal practices to come up with our values. We're not, just coming up with numbers out of the air. We're basing it on analysis. Valuations are based primarily on comparable sales. So we'll be putting together all the comparable sales that we might need to present to property owners, make sure that all of those have been thoroughly reviewed. All our valuation work is done in accordance with the Wisconsin Property Assessment Manual, and both residential and commercial property will be revalued, and any other kind of property like agricultural or anything else. The only thing the assessor doesn't assess is manufacturing property. The Department of Revenue directly assesses manufacturing property. That would be like hydrite. I can't think of a whole lot of examples, but there are properties that are assessed not by the local assessor, and then appeals for those kinds of properties go straight through the Department of Revenue. Here's some important facts to consider, and some of this information will be involved in our communications plan. Revaluations do not impact the amount of taxes to be collected or levied. Whether you had a revaluation or didn't have a revaluation, the tax levy would, in theory, be the same. There's no impact on the levy. The whole purpose of reassessing properties to market value is because the assessments determine how the overall tax levy is divided up between all the individual properties. And so if some types of properties are changing in value faster than others, for example, or if some had updates or fell into disrepair and the assessment records didn't reflect those types of things, they may not be paying their fair share after a period of time has passed and the assessments have not been updated. So by updating assessments, we are providing more fair and equitable distribution of the overall tax levy. Other things that property owners tend to have questions on, they will be notified by mail of their new assessed values. We send out the assessment notices all at the same time, so just because we visited your house earlier doesn't mean you get your notice earlier. They all come out at the same time. And that's followed by a period called the open book, during which time property owners may meet informally with the assessor. When they talk about an open book, they're saying the assessment roll is open, so you can look up the assessments of all your neighbors. You can ask questions, we can look things over, make corrections, make changes during that time. Access Dane through Dane County will also be updated to have the assessor's new information on it, so you can look at it that way. But the point is, before we enter into the board of review, we want to make sure property owners have had their chance to talk to the assessor, ask questions, and so on, so that the board of review is sort of designed for last resort. If the property owner and the assessor can't come to an agreement, then they move on to the formal appeal process. Timeline. We are right now in September 2025. I think looking at something about the 22nd of this month is the target date to mail the informational letters to property owners. We're working with village staff to see about updating the village's website with some PR materials and educational resources. And then we're going to begin on-site field data collection around the end of the month. October 2025, we'll have, I think, 12 field staff members in the village. So we're going to have you'll see our vehicles all over the place. And so with that many staff members, we're probably going to be able to get the work done in something like 6 weeks-ish, I'm guessing. So I think our target is by the end of October to try to finish the residential work. The commercial work will probably continue based on the availability of our commercial assessors, a little longer than that timeline. But we'll be here, everybody will know we're here, our vehicles will be all over the place, and it'll be done in about a month, at least the initial collection. Towards the end of the year, we'll be working on taking all that data that we collected and making sure it gets updated into the assessment records. January, we'll begin working on our sales analysis and valuation work, and that's going to continue for a few months. That's a lot of processing there to value every single property in the village. By July, we're getting ready to be complete with the work, and we'll work with village staff to post the dates for the open book and board of review meetings so the public can look up the dates and times of those meetings. In August, we'll mail the notices of changed assessment to all property owners, which again will restate those dates and some of these processes. And then we'll hold our open book meetings in August. September ideally would be the final board of review meeting. And after the board of review, the assessor kind of finishes out the year by providing some final reports to the state and the county. That's a high-level timeline. And then let's talk about communications. We'll break that up into phase one, which would be the communications prior to on-site field inspections. That's the kind of the phase we're in right now. And then phase two would be communications prior to mailing the notices of changed assessment. And I think in both cases, it's important to get out in front of some of those misconceptions that property owners might have. There tends to be some fear or apprehension that, hey, if the assessors are coming around, does that mean my property taxes are going up? And obviously, we won't know if individual property owners' taxes are going up or not this early in the process, but I think it's important just to be able to have some educational resources out there to sort of read up on these things and understand them. We do even have things like graphics and animated videos and all kinds of stuff. I know in this day and age, a lot of people have short attention spans, so we want things that are colorful, things that are simplified, and things that you can kind of leisurely go through. So we'll work with all those kinds of items. I don't know how big the village is on social media posting, but we have lots of sample language as well that we could use for things like that. So we'll work on a communications plan. It's already being discussed. So informational letters to property owners are number one. Before we begin field inspections, communicate with the police department, because once in a while we get people calling and saying, hey, there's some stranger walking around in your backyard or my neighbor's backyard or something. They'll also be given the license plate numbers of all of our vehicles and everything, just for extra protection. Get the village website updated, graphics, videos, language, all that kind of stuff. I think I have this in here twice, sorry about that. And then keep in mind that all the vehicles will be marked and the staff will have photo ID tags. And that's another form of communication. It's just to say, hey, this is who we are, and making it obvious. And did I miss one here? There we go. So, Not sure if I know how to maximize this, but anyway, the communication strategy phase 2 will be what we do before we mail out notices of assessment. And this is where I think we'll have a little bit more information about what we're anticipating for the overall increase in assessed value to be. And we'll want to start explaining things to property owners like your taxes could be impacted if your assessment increases at a percentage that's higher than the percentage of the whole village is increase. And that's going to happen. We tend to find about 1/3 of people have some kind of a tax increase, probably 1/3 taxes stay about the same, and 1/3 taxes could even decrease even though your assessments are going up. And sometimes that's like mind-blowing to people. How could my taxes decrease if my assessment goes up? It can happen. So these are the kinds of things that we're going to want to try to explain. We'll be creating an informational pamphlet to be included in the envelopes that have the notice of assessment that get mailed out. So it's just additional information to read and to understand what this notice is that you're receiving. We'll get that overall percentage increase published and have some resources to explain how it impacts taxes. We'll provide a summary of the assessment changes by property type, including land and buildings. So we'll have residential land 2025, residential land 26, and commercial land and so on, and pie charts kind of showing how much the assessment changes are by classification. And we can talk again about some social media posts to just get that word out that you should be going to the open book, not just going to the board of review, for example. We want everybody to have that opportunity to talk informally before the formal review period. So these are a lot of the things we're working on. Ideally, you know, this should be a fairly smooth process, but we just want to make sure that we have as much information out there for the public as we can. And I think that's it. Questions?
So just kind of the intent on why Dean and Associated Appraisal is talking about the 2026 revaluation. So everybody got in the mail kind of an intro to their on-site visits in October. So as Dean mentioned, the next critical date is July for getting assessment notices out. So now starting today, going through the assessment process, we want to make sure the board has an opportunity to ask questions and develop a formal communication plan that we can follow kind of as a blueprint through the revaluation, that has both dates for the village responsibility for communication as well as associated. So one thing that we've talked about as staff as including communication in this year's tax bills that are going out. I think that's an easy win to kind of save on postage. And then the next could be, again, probably more village driven sometime in March about, a sample calculator and other things on our website and things that we could do. Because it sounds like the next big lift for Associated is in that June, July timeframe. If the board is interested, we could certainly do, in-person informational session or conversation, having Associated come with staff to answer kind of high-level questions. Really just need direction from board about what the expectations or what you are expecting for communications going through the remaining revaluation.
Go ahead, Paula.
So I remember the 2008 assessment.
Okay.
And I think I got one letter and then my change. So obviously we're light years ahead this time around. So I think definitely when you mention videos on our website or social media would be helpful, just what's happening. Even if you have video of the trucks and kind of how it works, I think would be helpful. And I think, utilizing obviously our email, perhaps even water sewer bills, just to kind of reiterate would be good. I did have one question. So everybody's going to receive a letter. So in the case of somebody who's renting, does the letter go to the building owner or does it go to the building owner and the address or both?
Great question. So the addresses that we use are the ones that Dane County uses for tax billing. So we work with Dane County to give to receive an update of all of the individual parcels and the owner and mailing address. So it has to go to the landowner. However, there's a little sentence in there that says if this is a rental property, please notify your tenants that the assessors are coming around They don't always do that, but it's the best we can do to try to get ahead of that. So the other social media posts and things that those tenants as residents might be reading would be helpful. That also reminds me that Dane County has recently started giving out name and address information differently. And this was due to some legislation that went through recently or this past year, protecting, I think, judges and some other public figures from to sort of opt out to have their public information available. Well, one of the things that Dane County did is they're not just no longer providing the names of those property owners, but they're no longer providing the names of anybody who asked to be not displayed on the Access Dane website, which is in some cases 30–40% of people. And so now we are only able to get the mailing address, but the name shows as not available or something like that. And we've been a little bit frustrated with this process because these letters go out saying not available and then the owner's mailing address, but there doesn't seem to be a good way to get around it because the county has just made this policy now. So that's something that maybe would be good to communicate ahead of time too. It does raise some questions.
Trustee Dahl has his hand raised. We'll call on you.
Yeah, Dean, thanks for the update and the overview of this process. Obviously, it's a lot. I lived in the village in 2008 when it happened, and again, like Paula said, we did not have the number of channels of communication. So I think everything that you've mentioned and anything else we can develop with staff, website, social media, letters, notifications in the tax bills this year, utility bills, our newsletter, et cetera, I think is going to be really important to build that awareness and getting people aware of what's going on. I guess I did have two questions. One was, so the 2026 assessments will not change. It'll just be the equalized value, right? That will be adjusted based on the levy. It's the 2027 assessment that will reflect the reassessed value, correct?
No, the 2026 assessments will reflect it. The levy doesn't necessarily get impacted either way by the assessments, but
December
the mill
of
rate
26.
will. Yeah.
You're talking about the bills that go in December of 26.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
So essentially, okay, the levy for 27. It was interesting. I thought that there was a state statute that open book had to be completed by a certain date. So doing the open book in late August, is that consistent with what we can do under a reassessment?
Yes, there are some dates provided in the statutes for particularly for the Board of Review. The Board of Review has to meet by the fourth Monday in April, but the state oftentimes doesn't want assessors to finish up revaluations that early because they want the equalized values to be posted before the assessor mails out assessment notices so that they can make sure the assessor's in compliance. So there have been some, well, the law specifically does state that if the assessment roll isn't complete by that initial Board of Review date, that the board should adjourn to a later date until the assessment rolls are ready. So it is perfectly legal to have your Board of Review later in the year.
Okay, fantastic. And I would expect that we would want to make sure we've got some open book sessions that cover, you know, more time than historically, because I'm sure there'll be more questions. The second question I had is, in looking at your website, you talked about collecting sales data. Is there a process that you guys use to include recent sales data on Cottage Grove, the Village of Cottage Grove tax assessments? Because it doesn't appear that field gets updated. It's on your website, but it doesn't appear that there's any data populated. So is there a plan to populate that data as you go through this process and continue to update it as sales occur, or what's your plan?
Well, I think one of the things we talked about was to provide some kind of a list, including visuals of the sales that we're using for the revaluation. So we're able to say, okay, we've gone through all of the sales. These are the ones that we find to be arm's length sales that are usable for appraisal purposes, and just get that out there so that property owners can look it up for themselves. And we certainly can do that. I think traditionally when we've worked with municipalities, we've put that on the municipal website rather than on Associated Appraisal's website, but we could look at finding a place on our website if you'd like.
I guess maybe I wasn't clear on the question. So when when a property sells in the Village of Cottage Grove, there's a transaction, and I guess the question is, on your website for a particular parcel in Cottage Grove, there's a field that reflects recent sales data, like the City of Madison assessor and other municipalities have that data available. So if a neighbor is curious as they're looking at or thinking about selling their home, that they can see at least recent sale information as you use that for this process. Is there a plan to include that on parcel records as you move forward, or no?
I understand your question, sure. Thanks for the clarification. You're talking about the property lookup section of our website where you can look up any individual property in the village and get some basic information.
Correct.
Yeah, as far as I know, the recent sales are there, except that these only get updated, I think, once a year. And so if it was a recent sale, it may not be there. Otherwise, if you're not seeing something that should be there, I can talk to our technical staff. Otherwise, it should be there.
Okay, as I've just randomly looked, it doesn't look like there's any data available, but I think it's great that you do it, and I think it's a nice feature for residents of Cottage Grove if they're curious about their neighborhoods or valuations. So appreciate the answers to the questions.
My pleasure.
IGA did create on our under village projects the 2026 revaluation page. So really that's similar to the police station project and major projects. That's really where we want to push people for the communication. Mark and Nick shared a lot of resources that we can use from a communication perspective. So as we kind of sift through those, we'll continue to kind of share that with the board. So, we mentioned a couple of things. So obviously mailers come at a cost. Not saying that mailers aren't important by any means, but if I'm kind of just general consensus would be when we do our spring mailer would be a reminder of the assessment process, where the page is, again, with the tax bill. And then, at this time, the village doesn't plan to create any videos, just using associated resources. So what the goal would be next time, we take this feedback and Inga and I bring back, this is our timeline and what we plan to do. But if there's anything specific that you want, now would be the time to provide that feedback so we have clear direction on what to bring forward.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a lunch and learn again about the process. I know we did that when we switched trash providers. So I think that would be a helpful extra media boost and something that lives into perpetuity and we can share over and over again.
And our mailing list will actually catch renters. So, I mean, while they're not directly getting the tax bill, at least they're getting the information.
So the plan is for you to bring back a timeline.
Yep, I'll bring with Inga, to finalize, because we'll really use that as a template on what staff are using for direction. The 2026 budget communication line will include the resources needed to also implement that plan.
Any other comments about what you'd like to see or questions on the process? Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to 7 and consider resolution 2025-18 recognizing Good Neighbor Day in the village, which is September 28th.
It's a great day to celebrate. I would make the motion to approve resolution 2025-18 recognizing Good Neighbor Day.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Murphy and a second by Severson. Any comments or discussion? Do something nice for your neighbor that day. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 7D, discuss and consider resolution 2025-21 recognizing September as Firefighter Appreciation Month. Do you want to say something?
Sure. I just brought this resolution forth to just show our support for our volunteer fire department. We're very blessed to have them. It saves us millions in taxpayer dollars, and they make a lot of sacrifices. Just one instance, when most of us were out enjoying the beautiful weather on Saturday, the fire department responded to 4 fire calls that day. So just lifting that up.
Thanks, Paula, for bringing this forward. I know sacrifice to help people in their time of need is something that's very commendable, and I appreciate all of their work and time away, and helping those that need it. So I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-21, recognizing September as Firefighter Appreciation Month.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there's a motion by Murphy and a second by Dahl, and I'll just add thank you also to the families that support the firefighters in the village. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. 7E, discuss and consider Resolution 2025-22, Recovery Awareness Month.
This is also one that I'm bringing forth for two main reasons. One is to just talk about substance use disorders and break the stigma. I have several family members who struggle with addiction, one of which we almost lost from a heroin overdose. And so this hits very personal for me. But it's also a message of hope for those who are battling, that recovery is possible. And so I wanted to just recognize National Recovery Month, and I also wanted to lift up the services our police department provides. So in the vestibule of the police department, there is a drop box that people can bring unused medications all year long. There is also Narcan available. No questions asked, and I think it's a wonderful resource to help people in need. So that's National Recovery Month.
Thank you, Paula, for also bringing this forward and bringing it to light, because it is something that doesn't get talked about very often. And I think we're a community that can come together and support people when they need it. And this is one of those times that we help lift people up. So I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-22, Recovery Awareness Month.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a motion by Murphy and a second by Buenzo. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We're going to go back up in the agenda to 6 unfinished business. We have A through G to get through. The first one is discuss and consider the pre-annexation agreement related to 2 potential annexation parcels of land. I'm going to turn it over to Larry to go through the document that's attached for this item.
Great, thanks. As was discussed at the last meeting, there was a staff report that made some recommendations for some additional conditions to be included in the pre-annexation agreement with the owners. The owner was here then to talk about some of that with us. I think maybe they're here. Yep, there we are today. And I don't know if you have any plans to have them engaged, but just as a summary, the pre-annexation agreement that's before you tonight would add, in terms of conditions, some road work, what we discussed last time, which is urbanizing the inner part of the loop, I guess, of Gaston Road, the side that touches on the property in question. Urbanization would mean widening the road approximately 10 feet, curb and gutter, storm sewer, and then the other part of the road work was resurfacing that road, and all of that would be required once the property develops. And there were a couple other things added in here, one being that depending on what the development is that lands on the site, we need a connection between that road, I think it is, beside Oakstone up through the site up to Gaston. And other than that, it's, unless I'm missing something, the same as we had before. Oh, the TIA. We captured the TIA requirement also from Aaron's memo. I know that Josh has put together a quick summary of the costs associated with those, because we got some feedback from the owner, but it's probably a good idea to engage both of them maybe at the same time here.
Sure, you're more than welcome to come up front.
All right, so yeah, you said it pretty well, Larry. I guess I want to start with, right now, we do not have an accepted offer on our property. So I, as the owner, don't want to commit a future developer into a whole bunch of additional costs. And I don't know if you realize how far the village, and I understand the village would like this, but how far they want to urbanize Gaston Road. So all the way down, around the corner, and up the hill, which is, I had asked if Josh could give us an estimate on that, but I think it's in the millions of dollars that a developer is gonna have to pay for. So I'm not gonna commit a future developer. My understanding is that Creed Indoor is still interested in our property, but we don't have an offer. And I'm not at a point to commit a developer into that cost. I mean, if a developer comes and says, I'm willing to accept that cost, here's your offer to purchase, that's fine, but I don't wanna, at this point, commit that amount of cost on a developer. And to me, just common sense approach, I can understand fully urbanizing Gaston Road into what I'll call the secondary entrance. I mean, the main entrance of the Creed development is off of whatever that road is, by the Oakstone and then Herb Road. I would assume 80 to 90% of the traffic would come in that way. The auxiliary entrance off of Gaston Road, I fully could commit to urbanizing down to that entrance, but literally it's a quarter mile up to 2 residents, which are in the town of Sun Prairie, and it's a dead-end road. I mean, what's the point of putting sidewalks, curb and gutter, storm sewer? And I just don't see that that's a beneficial cost to anybody, the village, a developer. So that's, I guess, where it stands now.
If you want to stay up here.
Sure.
Is it okay? Because I think if Josh can share his diagram, we already did, and maybe, Josh, you can talk about sort of typically what our requirements are when a property develops in terms of what we do at the frontage. And I understand here it's on 3 sides, but that'd be great.
Yeah, I tried to quickly, David, put something together this morning to try to kind of encapsulate what we're talking about here. So I kind of highlighted this in 3 different colors. The yellow that's kind of shown on this exhibit is, David, I think kind of that portion of Gaston that we're talking about up to maybe where that access would come through, right? Or that access would be connected. After that, in the red and green area, you know, there's kind of the wetland area right up against the road, and then you'd have to go around the corner. But the red and green go all the way to kind of lot 2 there before you go further up the hill. So we're not really talking about that last piece further up the hill. Along here, we would probably leave that for a future potential realignment someday. You know, that potentially could go out into these other parcels and could front both sides of the road, and you get better use for that road in the future. So when we were looking at this, I think, Larry, you know, your question was, what would we typically do? Authentics would be a good example right across the street. It was a rural section, so meaning that there was a shoulder on each side. When Authentics came in, the village at that time and Plan Commission required them to urbanize their side of the road. If you notice on the asphalt out there, they widened a little bit for parking. They added curb and gutter, they added sidewalk, they had some storm sewer to take care of the storm sewer and the ditching on that side. Not too uncommon for a majority of kind of the development that we see fronting, you know, a right of way if it's not urbanized already. So that would kind of be those limits as we show kind of all the way around. I tried to break them up because I wanted to kind of piece them in cost buckets. So like the yellow piece would be, we're gonna take that roadway, we're gonna add approximately 10 feet, and that's an arbitrary number, you know, to get parking and a good street width on your side, so the south side of that street, curb, sidewalk, storm sewer, down to probably that low point, you know, near the highway was where the storm would probably go out into some sort of a basin that you develop there. And then repaving of that roadway. So the remaining roadway that's there, you know, mill it up and put new asphalt down. And I took numbers that we kind of got from the streets department this year. So I'm taking kind of active numbers. So on the yellow side in doing that, I get about $350,000, quick estimate, just to do that yellow portion of it. Then I stepped back and I did the red and the green. The red is assuming we just pulverize the existings there and we repave it. So we tear it all up, mill it all up, regrade it, repave it. The green would be taking it to the next level of also adding that 10 feet putting a sidewalk on it and putting a curb and gutter along there and getting stormwater to come back down the hill into probably, again, that wet area there. So I kind of parcel it into 3 separate numbers. The red to just pulverize and repave was 125. The green added around that corner is another 425, all in roughly $900,000. So I mean, there is an investment to that as part of development. I just kind of wanted to break it up because, David, I think you had talked about some of that. I think if we were doing both sides and we were urbanizing, you'd get closer to even the number that you were probably talking about. Sidewalk on that side, curb on that side, storm sewer on that side. You can start seeing how this would add up over time if you were doing both sides urbanized. Larry?
And that includes a 20% contingency, which
It does.
of course we try to build into everything that Strand does for the village so that we don't underestimate things. But this is also a relatively simple project in terms of our expectations would be that there wouldn't be a lot of unknowns here, right? But you never know. But I guess I want to shape the discussion or the considerations you're making tonight. So I don't know if it's sort of a what do we do now, right? You can have a conversation amongst yourselves about whether to require all these things as a condition of annexation. That has been, at least it's presented to you, that's the staff group's recommendation that the developer be required to do all those things. Again, not until it develops. You can certainly make a decision to do something different. You could make a decision to move forward with this and the next thing on the agenda and give the landowner some time to think about whether they want it or not, because they've got to sign the agreement before, regardless of how you adjust the agreement, before the annexation the motion on the next item, if you get that far, will be contingent upon execution of the agreement. I guess the other thing to keep in mind is that, where there are situations where there's a development and there's higher than normal, whatever that, site costs or public infrastructure costs, those are situations where there's been consideration of TID funding. This is, so this is not in a TID right now. The village is likely to be very restricted for a decade on what it can do with new TIDs, but there are other, even if delayed, sources of potential funding to help with something like this. So really, it's sort of up to you as to whether you want to carve back on what the requirements would be, do nothing, and say, well, we've heard this isn't acceptable, and then we will be done with this petition because we're running out of time, or move forward and approve either the current agreement, make adjustments to that, carve some of the colors off if you want, and then go ahead and approve it and give them an opportunity to decide whether to move forward or see whether that's acceptable to the developer or someone else, because otherwise they've got to start over.
And when is that? The date is early October, correct? October 3rd or something like that. It's
I can't remember the,
day
yeah,
window.
and whatever you look to do tonight isn't probably going to be any different by then. So, even if I haven't looked and see when our next meeting date is, but
I think, Larry, the next meeting would be within the 120 days, but not the second meeting in October.
Chris, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so this all, I guess, makes sense to me if it develops as one piece. But what happens if say Cree doesn't want to do it, and then he sells a tenth of the land to somebody, and then they develop? Do they have to pay for the whole thing?
Yeah, there's a number of people here who probably can have some comments about that. It really depends on what it is. Right now, the way the agreement says is you have to do these things when it develops. That doesn't mean that if they develop a southern portion piece, carve off another lot next to Oakstone or something, that would require this all at that time. But the way I would look at it is, once you get, and as Josh said, up on the north side there's some lower ground that's likely to be your stormwater adjacent, at least, location. you know, as you develop through, that's what we've done with everyone else, like, you know, we talked about West Lawn tonight, right? I mean, as you build, you urbanize, you're not required to do it when it annexes or when the plat's approved. So no, I don't think it would all be, but if the stormwater for the full site is part of a plan to start selling smaller pieces, that stormwater for the whole site has to be built out, right? So if the stormwater pond for the whole site is going to be on the north side, rather than little stormwater, you know, management for each lot, well, then you'd have to urbanize that. That's how you manage that stormwater and into that location. So it really just depends the timing of where and how much. If you still wanted it to happen and be at a developer cost, would really depend on the nature of whatever development was proposed. Josh is going to tell me what I said that was wrong.
I think it sounded good from over here. But I think, Stowe, you bring up a point too of you know, the yellow, or let's say you were just going to urbanize a portion of the yellow, and like that past developer comes back and it works for them. But if it's not them, and this is parceled differently, or, you know, there is a connection to up, you know, there's a different street and a connection up, or emergency services, we get into a conversation with, you know, where do you want it urbanized and where you don't? I mean, it's kind of, those questions I think are still out there and have to be thought about as you proceed forward. I mean, as part of this agreement, is it all for none then, Larry? If we say this is it, can they change that at a later date?
Yeah, and that was what Matt and I were just whispering about. So if the landowner accepts this as conditions of annexation, and then comes back to you and says, I'm not really able to market this property with these conditions, and you go through your whole CIP project like you've been doing for the last few months, and you say, you know, the village could commit a certain portion of, again, whether it's TID funding or levy, or, you know, you're in your regular CIP, you could certainly rediscuss that if that becomes an issue. It's just really a question of so many things in what you do, you can't figure out what the chicken and the egg is, and that's kind of what you have to just pick one to be first.
Comments, questions from other board members? Pete has his hand up. Oh, Pete, you have your hand up.
Can I ask
Yeah,
one question?
I guess I had a question. So when we look at, you know, the condition of that road, I think it's unfair to taxpayers to absorb that. I guess the question is, how can we proceed without putting the burden of any future repairs on those roads? I mean, if the development goes through and this all happens and we don't have to deal with maintaining a road that's 25, 30 years old, that's a different story. One of the questions I had is, when we talk about urbanization, I think the surface of the road is something that we'd have to take care of. If we annex this, I guess two questions. One is, could we just not annex the right-of-way so that it's not in the village, and the village taxpayers are not responsible for that road until access or a development comes along that wants that, and then that can be part of that development? Or is the way it's been platted, that's non-negotiable?
Great question. And I had some conversations with the landowner's attorney about this. It is possible to annex only to the center line. It really, Pete, depends on where the boundary of the parcel is. And I'm assuming, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, one of you, but I'm assuming that the parcel boundary here runs to the center line of this road. In other words, the properties on the other side of the road own to the center line from the outside of this, if you will. So it is possible to do that. I think to not annex the right-of-way at all, or just to annex it up to the yellow, would be something that would likely not survive our DOA review. And while that is advisory, I think it would be very frowned upon and probably create some issues with our neighboring jurisdiction that we always try our best to create a good relationship with. So that's the best answer I can give you on that.
Here's another question. The standard of urbanization comes in many forms. Can the section that's marked in green not have sidewalk? I mean, obviously that adds a lot of cost. I think there's certainly elements of the storm sewer and the curb and gutter that and the width of the road that come into play. But you know, how much foot traffic are you gonna have up there? I just question, could we take that off the requirement?
Pete, and that's kind of why I separated it a little bit into these buckets. You know, you have that 425,000 for that green. That's widening the roadway, that's adding storm sewer, that's putting a sidewalk in, that's putting curb and gutter on. You could just mill and overlay it on the red portion and forego the 425 until a later date. Let's say you do extend that and you develop off into the airport property, you know, long-term planning here. Maybe there's dollars or there's future TIDs or others that could help, you know, urbanize that section. Again, this is me just spitballing. But I agree with you, Pete. I think, you know, what is the use? Maybe it's different if this ever gets developed then someday and somebody wants to use that road for different access points, and it wouldn't be for this facility we're talking about, but for something different. Maybe then that green comes back as a newer requirement in the plan review stage of, hey, there's going to be a lot of foot traffic. You know, you're making connections to this road and different access points. Emergency service vehicles need to have access over there. Maybe that's a different discussion. Does it have to be with potentially what was proposed before? Not necessarily.
And the big key there is just the funding source for that is something that would have to be identified in the future.
Yep.
And your point about the sidewalk, I mean, I don't know what portion of the green bucket is sidewalk, Josh, you think?
Roughly 50,000 in that green portion is just sidewalk alone. I do remember that one. That's funny you asked that. It's one thing I remember as I was looking at it. I'm like, what if we got rid of the sidewalk? Plus that 50,000 had that 20% contingency added to it afterwards too.
Right.
So.
Oh, so 50 plus 20%, okay.
Yeah, and this is all kind of public bidding numbers. Sometimes, remember when developers get into this, it seems like their numbers can be a little bit more favorable than what you get public bidding. And if it's part of the larger project, maybe there's a little bit of benefit there too.
So I think that we could definitely do the urbanization up until what would be the, what did you call it, auxiliary entrance?
Secondary auxiliary.
Yeah.
And it all depends on, you know, a final site plan, obvious.
But I don't think we need curb and gutter and such all the way up. You know, my concern with East Gaston really is, can we get a ladder truck up on that road for whatever? I don't think there's going to be foot traffic. You know, I think my thought process was there was just going to be another exit out in case of an emergency situation. So I'm fine with just the 350 for the urbanization and then just milling the road and making it a smooth, drivable surface for people.
Heidi?
Yeah, I would agree that that's a good, you know, it's practical and serves the site well, and you know, that's something we could talk about later with, you know, Public Works team or something, like that it's a no parking area because it's not wide enough to park, but you know, that's easy enough to put up signs or something, just so we can make sure we can still get vehicles through. But that seems like a reasonable between.
I was going to say what you just said, Heidi, so I think that's reasonable as well.
Other comments from board members? Do you have any, do you want to add anything to our conversation?
I would just agree with you that it seems to make sense to, you know, just redo the road as is, and, you know.
Okay.
So I appreciate the comments.
So first up here is the pre-annexation agreement, which is the first discuss and consider.
So if everybody's in agreement on what some mentioned they were in agreement on, then we would just need a motion to direct us to modify this agreement to reflect that change. What we would do is we would probably get fairly specific about the how far, because, you know, it isn't going to be urbanized and then the driveway and then nothing. It might be a certain stretch beyond, small stretch beyond, tie it together. But if you give us that direction, you can vote on this tonight and we'll write it up and present it to them for review and get it executed.
Well, I would make a motion that we direct staff to, I wish, I wish I could
Just
have
say
just
so
like,
moved.
okay, so moved.
I'll second the motion.
Motion
Thank
by
you.
Severson and a second by Buenzo. Any other discussion on the pre-annexation? Otherwise, all those in favor?
Yeah, I
sorry.
had a question. I had a question. So when I'm looking at the pre-annexation agreement, it doesn't delineate that point where the yellow stops. So I'm assuming, Josh, you and Larry can work out the language that defines where that point of the yellow, because the current agreement's doesn't delineate, right?
Yeah, I think we pick a distance. I think that's like 750 feet or something from the old urbanization, you know. And it may go like Larry was saying, you know, you might come in the center of where it's filled there to connect, but it's nice to go a little bit past your entrance as people come in and out. And so, I mean, I've tried to be kind of conservative about how far we show that yellow line. It'll be somewhere right in there, but I think we can put a boundary that, David, maybe we can agree on in there potentially.
Yeah, we could even say, you know, if it's whatever the linear footage is, you know, 750 feet or X feet beyond second entrance once the site plan is approved.
Yep.
Something like that, we'll build it in.
Okay, second question then. Under the water main improvements, there's two pieces. There's the water main, and then there's completing the main loop. The Village of Cottage Grove taxpayers are going to pay for the completion of per the agreement and the way it's written, is going to pay for the completion of the water main loop, right?
Correct.
Do we have an understanding how the cost would break out or what that looks like for the village? Because we're going to pick up that piece when the development actually happens.
So, good question, Pete. And, you know, this development, or the one that was proposed, took water from the south and brought it pretty much, I'm gonna put my hand on, pretty much up to the northern part of the lot in here. Because it needed to get on the other side of this building, and it was in here, and we were gonna make a short stub back to Gaston from there. We had some linear footage called out. I guess it would kind of depend on how this was platted someday. I mean, there's a chance that if it's not that developer, there could be buildings that are all the way here, and they might would require them to bring water main all the way through just to serve the parcel. So, you know, maybe we put a maximum length or something in here of water main that would be provided, Larry, by the village, and then, or it's up to you.
Yeah, I think the hard part is not knowing what's going to develop here.
Right.
The first step would be for whatever development is proposed, we will make a determination as we would in any other situation about what's required to serve that site, and that's for fire protection, water use, everything. And from the best point to connect that loop, you know, that is consistent with the site design, we would add this. So I would say it ranges from no requirement for a loop at all. If the type of development we would normally require double connection, we'll require that double. We'll treat it the same as any other development. But if it's something like the development that was proposed, it really depends on where we lay out that site. So I think it's probably impossible for us to figure out right now, based on it during a pre-annexation agreement, exactly what that'll look like.
Yeah, I guess
But it
I'm
might
just
be
pointing
nothing.
out, yeah, well, it could be nothing, or it could be, you know, several hundred feet of an 8-inch line. It's just part of it, and it's not really clear, and I understand that until we've got some development and some clarity on where the buildings, where the water main is actually gonna go and how far it needs to be brought in from the south, we're not gonna know. Right? So it's just a liability that's gonna be hanging out there that's kind of undefined, but, you know, I think it's minimal in the broad scheme of things as it relates to where this could potentially go, right?
Yeah, and the other thing to remember about the loop is that it's something that we want to do. And so to whatever extent that is made less expensive by the development of this site, that's a positive. But it would be something we would want to do just for redundancy in the system, as I understand it.
The water utility, we did talk about this at Utility Commission. The water utility was in favor of the previous site plan to connect and what that cost would be. So they are aware of that at this time.
What was the magnitude, kind of?
At the time that it was between, I think it was like $75,000.
I think 75 was the high side.
It was
yeah,
the high
50,
side.
50 to 75,000, I think, depending on that length.
And the last question I had is, depending, I mean, obviously, we don't know what this is gonna look like. We, you know, if the previous developer comes back and we can proceed down that path, it's a little clearer, but is that a requirement to complete the loop? Are there certain elements of our water system that says we gotta do this at some point, or is it something we can defer for a period of time?
So as it was all playing out a couple months ago, we are already going down the southeast side of Gaston Road for the water main looping project here in 2026. So if everything had still been progressing as it was, we were going to do a stub as part of that outside the right of way, and kind of work with the developer with that site. Given the constraints and where we're at today, we may or may not put a stub, but it's highly recommended that this large development isn't served by just one water main line, and that we loop it through this area. And it would also provide redundancy to Oakstone, Steel, and all the other commercial sites that are right in that immediate area.
So until we have a final site plan or we're not going to really be able to answer that question. It's just there could be some incremental cost. It doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to be significant. I mean, it's a lot of money, but certainly in terms of what the property as developed and the equalized value that it brings, certainly is manageable. That's all the questions I had, Cindy.
Okay. I don't think there's any adjustments needed to the motion that are needed.
I agree.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we have discuss and consider annexation petition for these parcels of land into rural holdings. So there's two documents. One is the ordinance, and then there is a planning staff report. So I'll turn it over to Larry.
Yeah, the only difference here with the revised ordinance is as we talked about before, we're bringing it in as rural holding instead of planned industrial. And we added a severability clause to that just based on the process that we're going through, but it should have probably been in there anyway. So really, that's this only substantive change is the designation. And I'll note for our next topic, or if it's next, that when we're talking about the Creed development, Aaron and I and Rick talked, and we determined that because we're going into rural holding, it was a different zoning designation than what was in the original petition, and that's why for tonight we can talk about the Creed development, but Aaron's going to put that back through the Plan Commission, and I don't know if you've made a decision yet about whether the CUP is going to go back through, but if we have comments and suggestions when we get to that point, that can be added to what then runs back through the Plan Commission again.
Do we want to go through the staff report in a little bit more detail, or?
I mean, a lot of these, I think, are things we've talked about already. The main point of the memo was, there's a certain amount of issues that we dealt with the annexation. There's some other issues that we had brought up before that we'd get dealt with later with the site plan and CUP, and just trying to point out that these topics aren't things we've forgotten. We're just kind of waiting for the next step.
But before someone makes a motion, the motion would be to approve, subject to conditioned on execution of the pre-annexation agreement as modified per our previous discussion.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Just one question. There was not an ordinance number listed on the draft? There shouldn't be a number there?
Right, because it was just a draft at this point, and we will fill that in
after.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank
We
you.
only number the ones that get approved. Otherwise, we got missing numbers.
Okay, got it.
All right, so there's a motion by Severson and a second by Wenzo on the annexation petition. Any other?
I just have one other quick question for Larry. Just as a point of reference. The ordinance does not reflect the pre-annexation agreement in any way, shape, or form, although it's a recorded document that would go against the annexed parcel. Is that common practice, or should that be referenced in the ordinance as it's written?
We never reference those in the ordinance themselves, just because we're under contract then with the pre-annexation agreement that those are the conditions. But That's typically, this is typically the way we do it.
Okay, so it's deeded to it's gonna be recorded against the property, so it really doesn't matter. I just found it unusual that it wasn't referenced, so thank you. That's the only question I had, Cindy.
Okay. Any other comments from those in person? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. So this leads then into just a discussion on Creed, which is that sports facility development. So there is a PDF linked in the agenda that has some next steps and considerations. Aaron, if you want to kind of go over this a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. We had some issues pertaining to the annexation, and these are the ones that we would be addressing later with the CUP, site plan, rezoning. I think they're things we've kind of kicked around before, so I don't know that we need to go through them all in detail again, but these would be issues we can talk about when they take the next steps.
So I know that there isn't a current offer to purchase, and I don't know if there's a willingness to re-engage with the developer. If there's anything, we can obviously bring this back. We can hold. We don't have Plan Commission this month. I'm willing to. I know we had a couple dates on the calendar for some other Plan Commission items that we could have a special Plan Commission meeting if we wanted to entertain this earlier. If there was a interest from the developer in bringing it back. I don't know if other board members have additional things to add or comments.
Yeah, and as Aaron said, you know, what's presented here in the agenda is sort of a list of the kinds of things that we would take into account, and I think that if there's more than that, or there's differences between what you see and what you'd like Plan Commission to discuss, you have this unusual opportunity to sort of send a message, and you could carry that message. And the other thing I would say is we need to make sure that on the annexation that if Creed does come under contract, we need, the documents look different. We need their consent if they're under contract. I will cut that out unless I hear otherwise. Just wanted to follow up on that, but that's different than what we're talking about right now.
And Cindy, you had mentioned potential special meetings. There are some notice requirements for the rezoning and conditional use permit. I think I have to have those published Thursday in order to get the regular October meeting, so we don't have a ton of time to try to do something sooner than that.
What is the soonest date that could be a special meeting?
What is the soonest date that could be a special meeting to address the proposed zoning and the CUP, if they were to come back?
And we really do need to know whether the landowner and / developer want us to proceed with that, because we've got to post notice and get it on the agenda, and we need to know that within the next couple of days.
Yeah, so the regular October meeting is on the 8th. I mean, if I sent the notice in tomorrow, I think we could do the meeting on the 7th. I mean, it's like a day, yeah.
I know that we've had obviously a lot of feedback, evidenced by the giant stack of emails and public comment and discussions in the community. So I am definitely, I personally am hopeful that this developer is interested in re-engaging and moving it forward. And from my perspective, I'm willing to do, what it takes to get on the next agendas or to move this process forward. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments at this time.
To be clear, we need that request.
I guess I'd just like to share, since I was obviously one of the no's to begin with, that I know it seems like a monkey wrench has been thrown, and it has to a certain degree, but I do feel like at the end of the day, we have done some great things with this pre-annexation agreement and in protecting the taxpayers. But I'll tell you, the time has also allowed me to do a couple of different things. One is I had a listening session and heard from a group of people who brought up things that I didn't know about. So for instance, I took 2 pages of notes, and Sean, I'm gonna be sharing quite a few of them with you. But the fact that we don't have enough softball fields in Cottage Grove to host a tournament, right? Like, I didn't know that. I'm not in the softball circles, right? But I think, also just, I reached out to another sports complex director in Wisconsin of a huge sports complex and asked a lot of questions. And one of the questions I asked was, how often is EMS there? And he said, not very often. He said a lot of the sprains and stuff, and then if people need to be transported, they do it themselves. So I appreciate your patience. I appreciate the extra time that I've had to this to be more comfortable in this decision, especially with those public safety and traffic concerns. So I am definitely, in favor. Please reach out. I think a lot of us have done a lot of learning and listening, and hopefully it will result in a great addition.
I guess I would add that we have a pretty significant group of community members that are very excited about this potential development. And I think that shows that we have a lot of users. We have a lot of people that love recreation and sports and, building the healthy habits for their kids and participating in team sports. We have some pickleballers that would love the opportunity to join indoor leagues in the winter. I think that, this would be a great opportunity for our community and help, boost our local economy, help our hotel and our restaurants. Heard from local business owners. So I think, this has been an extended process, and I'm not sure if there's something else that we can do as a board to help, welcome this investment into our community. I'd be in favor of, having staff or a village president or something reach out to this applicant to, invite them back and let them know the next steps that we're taking. If they're so interested in continuing to put this investment in our community. So I'm not sure if any other board members would be interested in directing staff or Cindy to reach out to Creed. But, I think our community's shown that they're really interested in having us figure out a way to make this best fit in our community.
I mean, I'm happy to do so if it's all right with others.
Absolutely.
Okay. Homework then. Hopefully we get out sooner than later and I can accomplish that homework. Okay. Any other comments on the sports development facility? Otherwise, it sounds like there's at least majority of the board interested in seeing this to the next steps. Okay. Then we will move on to unfinished business D, discuss and consider revised public utility easement through the Tierney property, aka the farm. And I believe I tossed this back over to Larry again.
So I can't remember now the date that we had this meeting a few weeks ago, a couple months ago. We talked about the Coil South and Tierney / the farm developments and the interceptor, and I think Kyla and others explained the need we have for that interceptor. They can certainly answer more questions about that if you have them. But what we told you is that we were going to be bringing you two things. One was a revised easement for a better location for this interceptor through the farm or the Tierney-owned portion of the southern 2,700 feet of this interceptor. And that's what you have in front of you today for approval. We would terminate the existing easement. There was also a potential future road easement that we're terminating that was in the same place. We don't need a future road easement because when they plat the land, they'll dedicate the road. And our understanding and everyone's understanding is it'll be on top of the new location for the interceptor. And in fact, we're planning the construction process to provide for a sub-base for the road in that location. So that's the piece that's here. I will mention on the the development agreement for the Hamburg portion to the north. That there's a couple things we're still working through on that. We've had a lot of conversations with Hamburg. They've been moving in a good direction. There's a little uncertainty as to how we're going to, on their side, as to how they're going to guarantee the TID funding for the village portion of the costs. And we're still working through that, and we will, and it'll come to you at some point in the future. But what we did, what we're hoping to do, because of, as Josh mentioned earlier tonight before I got here, that we really did get a good bid on this interceptor. It was almost the best case scenario, and so to facilitate getting that portion done, we've asked Hamburg to set aside for a second the development agreement as it relates to other things like water service and stormwater, and to work with us on a contribution for the interceptor itself, and just peeling those apart for now. But all you have in front of you tonight, and all you will see with respect to the interceptor, if this continues down this path, is this easement, the contracts, construction-related provisions for both Hamburg and Tierney will be contracts with the utility commission. But those are all shaping up in good shape. We're almost done with the Tierney agreement, and really we just kind of hit Hamburg with this late last week, and I had a long conversation with them today, and they're working on their side. So we expect that to be the case hopefully by Wednesday when the utility commission meets.
Comments or questions for Larry on this item or staff?
I would move approval of the interceptor easement through Tierney property, AKA the farm.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion by Severson and a second by Dahl. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we have discussed Coil South development, which is just an update, I believe, from Larry.
And I already did it.
Okay, but I didn't know if you had anything else to add. All right. Discuss and consider shared sidewalk connections at Morning Dove and Pheasant Run with the town. And so there's a memo attached in the agenda, which also now kind of extend on the conversation we had at the last meeting. There's a little bit of some rough sketches on how the village, we could choose to extend village infrastructure, which would just be kind of the pathway that kind of illegally exists right now. I did have the opportunity to not be too creepy, but sit at that intersection and watch, people come back and forth, which they actually are used quite a bit. And my daughter was like, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I use it all the time." And so I think that it would be heavily used and a good, safe pathway. Yeah.
It's not creepy because I did it too, so.
I did it too, so I guess we're three creeps.
Well, I
You're
have
all
like a whole
sitting
kit
by
of
my house.
disguises.
I sit on my front porch and watch all the time.
All right, so we've all done our homework, and we have watched the community. And I think that, there's, I see the next steps as obviously the town has to agree to this, and if they don't agree, then we shouldn't put any more resources into this effort. If they do agree, I think that we could direct staff to further investigate costs, develop a potential timeline. I don't know what that would look like and what the effort would be needed and what year or how we could fit this in financially, but it would at least be a start.
So they're discussing
Cindy, what was the
it
initial
tonight.
feedback from the town when they took this topic up?
I think it's being discussed tonight
It
at
is.
the town board.
I believe my
Yeah.
memo is also in the town packet
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they had questions on, from the last meeting, they had tabled it because they wanted to know if it was town or village people using the pathway, and we're all one big happy community. And also some of the liability concerns, which Larry had kind of given some suggestions, which ended up in this memo tonight as well.
I wonder about setting up a joint town village meeting to kind of discuss these things in person and kind of work through maybe some of their objections in real time, because they're probably discussing it, and then maybe we'll watch the meeting and find out what those are, and it just kind of delays the process. But you know, I think, and I don't know if there are other issues that we could address with them at that time, but I mean, it is a safety
Like the
thing.
whole road.
Well, well,
Another
maybe baby
topic.
steps, but
Yeah, I know.
but that would be my suggestion. And I kind of wish, like, we have an extra Monday in September. We've got a 5th Monday that hypothetically neither board has anything scheduled, but that would be my suggestion. I think we might get a deal if we can, I don't know, barter in person, but we'll see.
I'll jump in here. Had I known Cindy was gonna use my crude looking pictures, I probably would have spent a little harder time on my blue paint job that I did.
Yeah, we went to both boards,
but
so you're welcome.
it's beautiful, my JPEG drawing. One thing to note is off of Morning Dove, it's a 10-foot path of asphalt there. We are planning to do bike path rehab along Damascus next year. That asphalt is something that we could likely just loop in with that project, as that's not going to be a large cost. The sidewalk on the concrete side of it, and we've been doing a bunch of sidewalk and concrete repairs internally, so it is something that I can talk with staff. We have capabilities to use a level, and we have GPS kind of deals that between them pouring the concrete and me working through it, we could probably do it in-house. So a lot of it just has to do with the tree removal, which is also something that we're able to do. But kind of just depends on timeline and as well as where the town's at as well.
And I know we did say like we would cover the cost of installation, but then also the maintenance as well.
I guess that leads into my one question I had. So on Pheasant Run, the north side of the street is a resident, but the south side of the street is village property. Because there's that stormwater pond on the southeast corner of Pheasant Run in Damascus. So would the village then maintain that, or would that be like an extension of that property owner's sidewalk that they would have to maintain their sidewalk? It's kind of like where the path is already worn, and like on the south side, there's like a big tree going right through, so that is, more difficult to connect that side.
Yep, and I'm pulling up the sketches here back and forth 1 second. So that was part of the reason why I didn't draw it on the south side, is there's some grade changes and that tree is kind of large. Just for ease of accessibility and kind of already path that users were using, the north side kind of looked like the best option. In terms of how we would maintain that, given it's kind of between two borders and we would talk to the homeowners, or specifically on the path, like on Morning Dove where the 10-foot path is, our staff already removes that, so that's something that we would just continue to remove.
But we could potentially remove that. I mean, we removed the snow on the sidewalk by the
pond.
By the pond anyway, so it'd be like just across the street, that small section, potentially add to.
Most likely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So you have this listed as discuss and consider. Do you want a motion of some sort, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for, I think a motion on this would be fine, just to move forward with it. Just so that there's some kind of concrete direction from the village, and then we can see what comes out from the town.
I would move approval of the sidewalk connections at Morning Dove and Pheasant Run, and for the village to assume any costs associated.
But wasn't the memo to direct staff to scope out the cost, Cindy? I guess if the town today is considering it, what comes out of that meeting could kind of be a fork in the road, right? Because if they say absolutely not, we do not support this for the same reasons they did before, then it's a moot point. If they're open to it, then wouldn't the motion be to direct staff based on positive feedback from the town of Cottage Grove meeting? Based on positive feedback, we would direct staff to develop costs and scope for making these connections.
amend your motion?
I guess I'll amend my motion to that.
Okay.
Sorry, Paula, thank you.
That's okay.
Does that mean you want to second it, Pete?
I will second that,
All
thank
right.
you.
Motion by Severson, second by Dahl. Any other discussion on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We have discussed and consider engaging with Ellers to complete a law enforcement impact fee study.
The proposal for what was discussed at last meeting is in the packet. The only thing I will add is I was asked to provide what the other kind of project, which is ongoing, the cost of that. So to do the water and sewer impact fees together, it's an additional $15,000 that the Utility Commission moved forward with almost a year ago. So on top of, above and beyond the $8,000 scope in the Ellers proposal, there would be codification fees and legal fees. You could fund this through Fund 410. You could also fund this through, just having it be an additional police station cost in 412. My recommendation would be to fund it somewhere in our 410 fund. At which I would come back with an amendment in the future, but that wouldn't stop us from signing an engagement with Ellers.
And the thought process would be these are happening at the same time.
Yep, so the things that have to happen at the same time would be at the same time. So it would be all the public hearings, all the legal review, all the ordinance codifications, which is where we get that scale of economic efficiency. It would be one report that has different chapters. So we'll have a water chapter, sewer chapter, and law enforcement chapter. Then the board will take action on either the whole report or segments of the report, because it might come back where a certain dollar amount is not approvable by the board or acceptable, and we can make those adjustments. I do kind of think it would be somewhat important to have like an informal, I don't know if a lot of business owners and even the chamber have over kind of a sight on this for both water and sewer, which we had kind of talked about with Charlie on possibly getting a time to let businesses come in and talk about any concerns that they might have with this, just so the board has that feedback as well.
So just to clarify, this is to approve the money to do the study. It's not necessarily approving the impact fees themselves.
Right, correct.
I think that's a good idea to talk to commercial owners separate from residential, have those two different kind of focus groups on listening session, because I think their concerns might be different and might be better to tailor questions for each of those separately. So I think that's a good idea.
And to kind of get in front of the public hearings for water and sewer, the intent always was to reach out to the major developer, the major players, just to make sure we got that feedback. This would now just add that layer of making sure, hey, this is also something new that we're considering.
And just from a time perspective, I mean, obviously, this is a couple months process, right? So any potential developments that are coming before us in the coming months wouldn't be subject to this if we do institute it, correct?
Correct. I mean, based off of just the timing of plan, I don't think anything's at the stage in plan and village board that it would even be approved in the next 2 months. So you would be talking about, ideally, we would have this in place as of January 1, 2026. And so if a development was approved and pulled the permit, we would base off the fees and things in place as of when it was in place. We wouldn't grandfather anything in.
Understood. So I just wanted to ask that question. Like, it's not going to slow any potential developments that are in the hopper or soon to be in the hopper. It would be a next year thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I brought this up to begin with, so I support the idea of looking at this. I know we've done studies on other things. And again, it doesn't bind you to having to institute the fee. But I think it's definitely worth looking at. So, when we talk about tax relief and protecting taxpayers and different things, this is just another avenue that not only would help that, but it also would, give us a little room in our levy if we're able to, pay some of the debt service on that. So I would like to see this move forward. So I'm going to make a motion that we engage with Ellers to complete a law enforcement impact fee study.
There's a motion by Severson,
I'll second that motion.
a second by Dahl. Any more discussion?
I just have a comment to thank Ellers for adding this on last minute and presenting to us and making this option available. Since we already kind of had this plan, this is kind of tagged on late. So if you could pass that along to them, thank you.
I guess I'm not sure. I know we have a financial management plan for the police station that we've approved, and we have a strategy moving forward. We've timed it very well with the closure of TID 5. So I'm interested in seeing exactly what this impact fee looks like. I guess I can see the benefit to having it combined with utilities. But when this whole conversation started, I thought it would be more for a future fire EMS station, which I know we're going to have that information next year. But that would have to be a separate, if we were to have an additional fee on top of everything else, if we wanted to also go that route versus police station. So I guess I'm not, just to be transparent, I'm not 100% on board with a law enforcement police station impact fee. But I'm interested in the data that would come out of the study. So, any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. Let's move on to 8, reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. We'll start with Police Commission.
So the Police Commission met last Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. It was an in-person meeting. They approved the minutes from the May 7th meeting. They then proceeded to have discussion and review of their bylaws and rules with some modifications that they're going to be bringing forward and we're working on with them. And they then adjourned with no future date set at this time. And I was not present. Lieutenant Wagner was in person in my place.
So don't ask any questions on that. All right. Moving on to public. Are there any questions or comments? Public Works, Properties, and Sustainability Committee. Chris.
We met on Wednesday, September 10th at 5:30. We approved the minutes. We discussed and considered and approved the recommended budget. We discussed and considered and approved lowering the speed limit on West Cottage Grove Road from 45 to 35, which is going to be a discuss and consider in front of the board tonight. We discussed potential amendments to the subdivision ordinance with no real direction there. We kind of kicked it to the ad hoc housing chapter update to talk more in depth about that. Engineers report, West Lawn, Phase 5 is finished. Phase 6 is slated to be started later this year. Quarry Ridge Phase D, village staff has contacted the developer to complete the eastern extension of School Road to meet the requirements of the developer's agreement. Amazon facility, utilities have been installed. They're working on roadway improvements, but that's all up to the county. Heyday started earth moving, as you've probably seen driving past there. They're hoping to get utilities done, utilities started later, and then hopefully fund them in a way this year. Street improvements are ongoing. The path on the southern portion of BB is moving along. And we're still waiting on the signal at Taylor, Wheelbridge, and N. The director's report. Wisconsin Stormwater Week is September 20th through the 28th, so I'm sure everybody will be celebrating that. They're working on cleaning and filling cracks on different streets, working on sidewalk replacements. They've completed 75 as of the 10th and are working on another 30 or so. Working on stop sign policy. Kyla's going to go over with Jason. She's going to be reviewing all the streets and update the pacer rating for that. And we got an update at the traffic counter at the mid-block on Michelle Lane. And it's, I think, all I got. We adjourned at 6:33. Anything that I missed?
Just a couple things, and then I'll let Kyla go. Just because it's.
I guess you did miss a couple things.
So, from a 2026 budget perspective, as Chris mentioned, they recommended a budget to Matt and myself for review. The day after, maybe 2 days after, we did Facebook, other posts to kind of point people into the direction of, we had a meeting, there's a budget form available to provide additional feedback. Our kind of cadence will be after each meeting is had. So we have utilities and library this week. So after, and EMS. So after each of those meetings, we'll do a social media post that again, if you want to listen to the budget presented, it's available. And there's a 2026 budget feedback form, and that's the most appropriate way to find direct feedback before our listening session, which is 29th or 30th, one of those 2 days. Additionally, please, if you're not on the Public Works Commission or committee, there is a stormwater feasibility study as part of that recommendation. I did ask Strand. They weren't present at that meeting, but I did ask them to come to the October 13th Budget Review Committee and then the Village Board workshop. That's a pretty significant investment. And so it's also a very complicated process. So please, if you have questions as board members, reach out to Kyla and I, and we'll start to facilitate those questions leading up to that. But they will be available to kind of explain what that process is and what final implementation would be. Essentially, you wouldn't move forward with that process for the feasibility study without a pretty significant commitment that you're would actually implement that plan. Very expensive. Not that. And it goes really well with the stormwater kind of plan that was being done this year too, kind of lays in. So Kyla and I are available to answer questions there. And then I will let you finish your public works spiel.
I was going to say all of those things too. No. No, I don't have anything. It's just the discussing.
There is a discuss and consider. There's a PDF for the Cottage Grove Road speed limit reduction. And the recommendation was to approve from the committee.
Yeah, the only thing that I mentioned was that I would like to make sure that we have some communication out to people so that they know. Otherwise, there's just gonna be a lot of angry people getting tickets that didn't know. So I would like to try to head that off by making sure as many people know as possible. I don't know that it's going to actually slow people down. So in a perfect world, I would like to have us think of other ideas that could actually slow people down. But I guess this is a good first step.
I guess I had one question, Chris. Was there any logic or any discussion on why it was selected at Fundamental Way, not at Bus, or maybe shortly before Bus or something? I'm just sort of curious as to how the location was arrived at for the reduction in speed.
The existing speed limit sign that is there as you're leaving village limits, it would just be switched out from 45 to 35. So that's where we would change the limits from, Pete.
Oh, it's just so close to Bus Road. I thought, well, to go into that controlled intersection at Bus and then come to Fundamental, it just seems like to go another 200 feet or 200 yards up the road to make that reduction would seem like more impactful. And I wasn't in the discussion. I'm just curious as to how it arrived. And it makes sense. There's a sign. It's a low-cost way to do it. But is it the right location? I'm just asking the question.
We would be reducing it as you're coming into the village as well.
But after after the bus road intersection.
No, before the bus road intersection. So it'd be from village limits, which is just west of bus road to Fundamental Way, but going both directions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And the other question that somebody brought up was it goes up to 50 as you go out westward. Sorry. And that's a higher, more than 10-mile-an-hour speed change. So we don't know if the county is going to have to change any of their speed limit signs, but that's for the county to decide, I guess.
I'm seeing no's from law enforcement.
The county can keep their speed limit at 50 if they so desire.
All right, so this is a discuss and consider.
I would move approval of lowering the speed limit on West Cottage Grove Road from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour from Fundamental Way to village limits.
And I'll second.
All right, there's a motion by Severson and a second by Murphy. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Reports from village officers, the village attorney. Nothing. All right, so we have village administrator's annual presentation on village development. So this is linked as a PDF in the agenda, and I'll kick it over to Matt.
All right, thanks, Cindy. I noticed a couple, we'll see if anyone notices them. There were a couple tweaks I made to the slides that are in the packet, but nothing too much of note here. This is the 2025 update to this to the presentation, but just a note that this includes everything since the last time we did the presentation. So from this time last year going forward, starting in tax increment district number 10, which was created in 2018. This is a 300-acre TIF district north of the interstate. Most notably, of course, the Amazon project. Amazon owns roughly half of the district, and the remaining half is owned by 3 primary landowners, which are listed there. Scarlet Badger, for your information, is also commonly, it's a LLC that's tied to ownership with Gray Wolf. Next slide, Aaron. The Amazon Distribution Center started construction last fall. We're anticipating the final property value to be about $300 once complete. The bulk of that will be realized at January 1 of 2026. As soon as they can begin and everything's finalized with the county and state, the quote-unquote off-site roadway improvements will begin in the spring of 26 and continue on throughout that year. The contractor, Ryan Companies, Amazon's general contractor, is expected to be substantially complete with the facility by fall of 26. And then at that point, Amazon will be doing a lot of internal work within the facility, and they're expected for operations to begin in the spring of 27. The Commerce Park consists of most of TID 5, which you see outlined here. To put in perspective of TID 10 that we just talked about, the Commerce Park's about 127 acres in total. Very successful TIF district that's set to close next year. There's only about 3.5 acres that's undeveloped, although all of the land is accounted for. Most recently, Johnson Health Tech acquired 2.5 acres for future expansion, and we've noted a couple other areas of development potential that is around Commerce Park. Of course, the 33 acres of the annexation property we just talked about. Andrew Homburg Construction owns about 1.5 acres that is south of KinderCare, and then the Houstons have close to 11 acres that's west of the Park and Ride. You may remember at one point a handful of years ago, they had a hotel that was interested out there, and that just did not move forward, but that's another opportunity that's north of the interstate. Recent activity this year in Commerce Park and the surrounding area. We had Mr. Queso Sports Bar and Grill move in place of BB Jack's that closed. In the Cottage Grove Commons mixed-use facility next to Gray's Coffee, 2 new businesses have gone in. Osteo Strong and Verizon just this month, I believe, got their occupancy permit in that building. And then also, I had mentioned Johnson Health Tech, but Dolphin Swim Academy, they do a summer camp, and they added an accessory building that's under construction for that parcel. Speaking to the closure of TID 5, that's expected next year, covering some of the tax benefits. So $257 million will come onto the tax rolls, which is a notable tax benefit for the average home. Talking about this would be for the 2026 tax bill, approximately $1,300 of positive gross tax impact on a fair market value home. In addition to that, the TIF district has $3.5 million of fund balance that will be allocated proportionally to the varying taxing jurisdictions in a lump sum. The village specifically will get a little over $1 million, and the school district about $1.8 million. And you can see the others there. TIF district number 8 covered the Farm Interceptor, which will run through here, although no longer needing TID funding. Recent projects being Foundations Dance and New Tech Painting, and then recently approved project is the Zilke Court Crossing multi-tenant commercial building. So that could start as soon as they get permits, but we haven't gotten any kind of time frame on when they want to start yet. And then earlier this year, Brew Pub presented a concept, and at this point, we're just kind of awaiting for possible application for that. Pictured here are the projects that opened during this last year, New Tech and Foundation Dance. Pictured here is the multi-tenant commercial facility that Zilke has recently gotten approved. The Farm Sanitary Sewer Interceptor is pending Utility Commission approval, which is expected at their upcoming meeting. And then this TIF district also includes the final phase of Coil South, which is the Hamburg parcels. TID 9, which is right across the street and kind of surrounding us here. The southernmost area is, the bulk of that is Authentics, which has helped the village then leverage the area that's outlined in black, which is a redevelopment area that the village has been acquiring parcels for future redevelopment. And then the rest of the district also covers other potential future redevelopment opportunities as well. And we'll cover some residential development. There's 3 subdivisions that are currently under construction at varying stages, and then those are noted in orange, and in yellow are possible future planned, or they are for future planned subdivisions. Probably the 2 of them that we could see come sooner than later would be West Lawn 6th edition, and Hamburg is planning any time now to bring forward that plat, and then with the farm interceptor going through the farm, we presume that's coming in the not so distant future. And heyday development that's been referenced has just started this month, and consists of 114 units, 2 and 3 bedroom townhouses, and also includes some pedestrian connectivity through multi-use paths on West Cottage Grove Road and Bus Road. Not noted on here, but you can see a small 1 acre commercial parcel that is also planned for this area off of Fundamental Way. Construction will continue through next year. And then how all this wraps into our net new construction. So these are the percentages of increase in the village's tax base based on new development. We don't have all 6 years noted here, so you'll have to take our word for it, but we're other than DeForest and Cottage Grove are the only 2 that end up in the last 6 years in the top 5 in Dane County out of 28 cities and villages. So you can see where we've ranked in those years, and then we're anticipating to kind of kick everyone's butt in 2026 there with a 19% addition, primarily due to Amazon and other projects. And then that ties all into our total equalized value, and you can see those changes on the far left, and then in the middle is residential. But what's cool is the increase that we've seen in commercial. So we're diversifying our tax base and not being, as reliant on only residential. So you see those higher double-digit percentages over the last 6 years for commercial, and we anticipate that to continue. So that's all I had for tonight, but Aaron and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
So can you say more about that, please?
Yep. We're putting the bulk of it, Cameron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're putting the bulk of it towards reducing debt service for the police station. And then, this is in the financial management plan. And then I think a chunk of it is also going to our capital fund to, I guess, Cameron, you can speak to the particulars there.
So the information that Matt presented is going to be presented at Joint Review Board on Wednesday. Conservatively, I used $800,000 lump sum payment. So $600,000 of it being offset the police station project borrowing, another $50,000 to offset some general fund to reduce the levy for 2026. With then any remaining dollars to go to the capital project fund to cash fund remaining capital projects.
The Joint Review Board, for everyone's information, is for any requests we make to create tax increment districts or to amend them, go to a Joint Review Board that consists of a representative from the county, every tax jurisdiction, so the county, the school district, the tech school. So they have to make approvals on these kind of things ultimately to close out the district.
So the amount applied to the police department, is that like our highest interest rate? Or is there older debt that's at a higher rate that would make different sense?
So the current outgoing debt is at its highest interest rate, just because of where the economics are. I think as we kind of get closer to the police station borrowing, we can certainly discuss kind of our biggest bang for our buck there. But yeah, the current recommendation would be at the estimated about a little over 4.5% interest rate. Let's reduce that up front and reduce the interest payments kind of in the next couple of years. So hopefully.
Yeah, I was just from a debt erasure, does debt snowball work, or do you know what I mean? Or should we pay a smaller debt off that we don't have as much? I'm just.
Yep. And And so kind of too with our debt service, we have debt that's callable and not callable. So just because we have certain debt that we have outstanding, we actually can't pay off early. There's some debt that we have options to pay off early. So yeah, there will be, Allers provides me with a document on an annual basis too with, okay, this is our current debt. And is there anything make sense to do like a refunding? So like that happened a lot. When we came out of a recession, there were a lot of municipalities that had recommendations. Hey, you have 5% interest rate. You can get interest rates at 2%. Even though it costs money to issue debt, you're going to save money in the long run. It wouldn't surprise me if things really kind of in the next several years take a turn, that there'll be opportunities to refinance some of the debt that has been issued.
Thanks, Matt, for your presentation. I always look forward to this every year because I think it really recaps, what has happened from the first year. And I look back to quite a few years ago, and a lot of these spaces have really filled up. And while we look at, you quantified all of this growth on the slides, which I appreciate and it's valuable, and, $1,300 positive gross tax impact. I mean, these are significant numbers that are really going to help provide tax relief for our community, but also improving the quality of life of our residents by having more restaurants, childcare, activities right here in Cottage Grove, gymnastics, swim, dance, having a hotel for guests to stay at. I think over the years, we've really provided a lot of new opportunities, and we're kind of in a uncertain economic times, so we have more jobs right here in Cottage Grove for people and more opportunities for different places for people to live. And I know that these slides kind of summarize a lot of work that has gone in behind the scenes, so I appreciate that as well. Thanks.
I'll just add, this is a summary slide, and I think kind of doing a deep dive into all things village in the last year and a half. I have a lot of respect for everyone who works on all of these projects and keeps our village functioning, and these are really complicated, lots of meetings, lots of time, lots of hours, energy, and shows a great commitment to Cottage Grove and making this a better place. So yes, thank you so much for doing all that everyone does in the village. I think we all really appreciate it, and it definitely goes unsaid too often. So yeah, thank you. You guys motivate each other, but yes, high fives all around. Thank you. All right. Oh gosh, are we almost done with this agenda? It's so early. All right, we'll move on to number 10, communications and miscellaneous business. Consider approval of the vouchers, the bills list. We have a hefty discussion on this one.
I would move approval of the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Murphy, second by Severson. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence. Obviously, lots of emails that have come to the village board on the Creed developments. Shady Grove had a information session last week, and we have some results that are going to be posted tomorrow about their playgrounds, but there's been lots of communication from the residents in that development. Anyone else have any correspondence? Upcoming community events.
I do have an interesting event that came out of CARPC, the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, which I serve as commissioner. And it's coming up the week without driving, which I didn't really understand the impact of it. It's September 29th through October 5th. And it's actually more of a deep dive into transportation equity and accessibility, exploring how car dependency impacts people with disabilities, older adults, young people, and others who can't drive, and what it takes to build communities where everyone can get around safely and independently. So, well, the first time I heard about this, I thought it was like a Madison urban thing where they want you to get rid of your car. But I think it's really a highlight of the impacts of people that we have right here in Cottage Grove and every community across the country, older people, people with disabilities, and of course all of our young people on how they get around. There's like book discussions, and there'll be a lot of awareness on, if you follow CARPC online, they'll have some information about it as well as the Madison MPO. The book is called When Driving Is Not an Option. There'll be some book discussions in the Madison area, so I encourage you to learn a little bit more about it.
Future agenda items.
Wait, we forgot to mention Touch a Truck this Saturday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Sean.
yeah, I was gonna say, touch a truck this Saturday, 10 to 12 at Cottage Grove School. So if you can come, great.
There's going to be a loader there if you want to check out and get inside the loader. I'll have staff there.
All right, future agenda items. I'm sure there's a lot of things that'll appear on the next agenda. Budgets obviously are starting to be talked about, so we'll start seeing some of that, especially next month. Anything else anyone else wants to add? Okay. Otherwise, number 11.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Murphy and Severson for the win. Non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.